The Prime Minister vows to send British troops to Sweden or Finland if invaded by Russia.
Good morning to you. It's 6 o'clock on Thursday, the 12th of May. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Isabel.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. The Prime Minister has signed a major military pact with the leaders of Sweden and Finland that would see British troops sent to the Nordic countries if they were invaded by Russia. He's the first Western leader to explicitly pledge military support.
Police in Bristol believe a missing 15-year-old girl has been abducted. Maddie Thomas hasn't been seen since she left her home in Southmead on April the 26th, saying she was going to the shops.
Platinum Jubilee celebrations kick off today at the Royal Windsor Horse Show, with most of the Queen's great-grandchildren, including the Princes George and Princess Charlotte, expected to ride in a horse-drawn carriage as part of the finale. We'll be down at the show later in the programme.
Don't forget, we would absolutely love to hear from you today. There's lots to talk about, actually, whether it's anything to do with the Platinum Jubilee or your neighbours putting extensions on the house and you being able to object. Is that a good thing or not? Is this new scheme that's being talked about? Or anything. But we're going to talk about being woke a little bit later on as well, aren't we?
Do you find that term offensive or a compliment? Let us know your views. GBnews at gbnews.uk or tweet us at gbnews. So our top story this morning, the Prime Minister Boris Johnson has signed a major defence pact with Sweden and Finland that could see British troops deployed if the Nordic nations were invaded by Russian forces.
Now, the PM held press conferences with his Swedish and Finnish counterparts and reiterated the need to defend Europe for generations to come.
Many of us have been paying tribute to the brave men and women who secured victory and peace in Europe 77 years ago. And so it's a sad irony that we've been forced to discuss how best to fortify our shared defences against the empty conceit of a 21st century tyrant.
Well, he also said that Britain would very seriously consider deploying nuclear weapons to protect the sovereignty of the two countries.
Now, the visit comes as the countries consider membership of NATO, with the Finnish president expected to approve his country's membership at some point today.
Well, joining us now is the assistant editor of Conservative Home, William Atkinson. Very good morning to you. Look, the big takeaway from all of this surely has to be that Prime Minister Boris Johnson has committed British troops to be going into Finland and Sweden should Russia invade.
Yes, certainly. We've certainly taken a step that no other Western country has so far been willing to do by providing this security guarantee to both Sweden and Finland. And more importantly, it's not just British troops we're talking about. I think one of the reasons why Sweden and Finland were so interested in Britain in particular providing this guarantee is, of course, our nuclear deterrent. And one can say that this is both perhaps the best possible deterrent from Putin from taking potential action against Sweden and Finland as he has against Ukraine. On the other hand, one could say that it also increases the avenues for escalation towards potential nuclear conflict, which is obviously completely and utterly terrifying.
It's interesting, though, isn't it? You can understand people saying, well, why would we be prepared to send troops into these countries? But obviously we're not putting any boots on the ground in Ukraine.
Well, I think one of the lessons that the government has taken from what happened in Ukraine is that, frankly, our security guarantees to Ukraine were not strong enough. And that's why Putin was willing to take action. If you contrast his behaviour towards those parts of the former Soviet Union which have now joined NATO, such as Poland or the Baltic states, etc., they believe that they are protected by the security guarantee that NATO provides. Ukraine, of course, was not a member of NATO. And whilst Sweden and Finland wait for their NATO membership to be approved, I think they see this as the next best bet.
And just discussing NATO, I mean, if they are accepted by NATO, and presumably they would be, that would mean pretty much Russia will be encircled right down from top to bottom by NATO. And I was hearing that Finland's army is at around 200,000, or is it 300,000? 3 times the size of the UK army. So significant contribution to the alliance.
Certainly, and Finland spends about 5% of its GDP a year on defence, which, of course, is far larger than any sort of NATO member, aside from... Well, it's even larger than, as a percentage of GDP, I believe, than what the United States spends on defence every year. So it would certainly be a significant contribution, but that's what happens when you have an 810-mile border with Russia.
And pretty much open border.
Yes, and I think you've got to remember in 1947, sort of Russia, or the Soviet Union as it then was, sort of forced Finland into neutrality, and ever since Finland has slowly sort of been moving closer and closer to the West. But George Kennan, the American diplomat who came up basically with the concept of the Cold War in his famous long telegram, once said that NATO expansion was the biggest failure of American foreign policy since the Second World War. So certainly one never wants to seem at all like a Putin apologist, and I loathe the Putin regime with every ounce of my being, but one has to be careful from a geopolitical perspective that as noble as what the Prime Minister may be hoping to do is, leading the West, show the way, the problem is that it does also increase the number of potential tripwires in that respect.
That's a really interesting perspective, though, isn't it? Because obviously there are these areas now which do need backing up, and certainly when you look at the Eastern Front, as it were, that's going to have to be bolstered for a considerable amount of time to come as well. But you just think it's going to add more pressure on the Moscow regime, whoever is in charge, to push back?
To an extent. I think the fact that Putin has taken this extraordinary action of invading Ukraine, I think, confirms something that, frankly, most of us knew for quite a while, which is the man is a terrifying nut job. But he's also a terrifying nut job with more nuclear weapons than any other leader in the world. And as noble, as I say, the intentions behind what we're doing, both in the Nordic and in supporting Ukraine and leading the West in that respect, we are also entering a very sort of sticky wicket when it comes to geopolitics and potential escalation.
Yeah, and Boris had some words to say. I mean, he didn't want to talk too much about it, but he did hint at our position when it comes to nuclear matters and the Nordic countries.
Definitely. And I think probably obfuscation is not only the Prime Minister's natural habit, but also perhaps the best thing to do when we're talking about such sort of potentially serious matters in that respect. But yes, certainly the underlying geopolitical situation is increasingly fraught, I would say.
A bit closer to home, what is certainly a very serious matter is the cost of living crisis. Now, we're talking yesterday about the Prime Minister sort of saying we are going to look into this, whatever that means. Meanwhile, one of his backbenchers popped up yesterday and said, well, the poor can't cook, they could survive on 30p a day. This is not the image that the party wants to portray, is it?
No, I think Lee Anderson has a habit of sort of going off on his own tangent, shall we say, on matters like this. And I think he has decided to cultivate a reputation for sort of common sense and plain speaking. But times like this, I think it just seems rather out of touch when people are struggling to pay their bills.
Talking of struggling to pay the bills, we saw pressure on the Prime Minister the day before yesterday, after the Queen's speech, when he was sort of challenged at the dispatch box about why the cost of living wasn't included in the speech. And he hinted that there were going to be more plans to come. And there are various sources this morning in the media suggesting different plans are being drawn up by the government. One broadcaster claiming to have sources telling them that there'll be a tax cut announcement before the end of July. And the Daily Mail leading this morning with Rishi Sunak warming to the idea of an energy windfall tax. Do you know anything, or have you heard any of these speculations swirling?
Well, from what I'm sort of picking up on, I think there's various different ideas, as you say, going around SW1 at the moment. And I think the tendency, especially within Number 10, is to think that the spring statement largely flopped, though I think there were some good elements within it. And so I think as the economic crisis that we're seeing largely spiralling out of control, really, the Bank of England's got it completely wrong in its predictions of inflation and the like. And as that continues to surge, I think the Bank of England was just sort of hoping that it could stick its fingers in its ears and that it would go away. I think some of us were saying months ago, not to seem like, I predicted this, some of the Bank of England couldn't. But inflation is clearly going to go past 10% and probably quite significantly past 10%. And the Bank of England was hoping that it would peak at about 8% only 2 months ago. And I think when we talk about inflation, for most people, that just seems an airy-fairy economic terms. That's genuinely, people struggling to pay the bills and seeing significant price rises, especially if by the end of the year, for example, energy costs have tripled. That's really going to hurt a lot of people.
Yes, it is. No doubt about it. William, good to see you this morning. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Now, police in Bristol believe that a missing 15-year-old girl has been abducted.
Maddie Thomas hasn't been seen since she left her home in Southmead on April the 26th.
Well, our South West of England reporter, Jeff Moody, is live for us this morning from Southmead in Bristol, which is close to where Maddie was last seen. A very good morning to you, Jeff. Look, what more can you tell us about Maddie?
Well, Maddie Thomas left the home of her foster carers on the 26th of April. She was just heading to the shops, but didn't return. Foster carers have been saying that they are extremely concerned about her whereabouts, and Avon and Somerset Police launched an investigation immediately. They've been doing house-to-house calls. They've been talking to anybody that might have seen her. They've also been examining CCTV to see if that can give some sort of idea of what might have happened to her. But where this story takes a slightly dark turn is when the police started to examine Maddie's social media. Maddie has been very active on social media for a very long time, but she has lots of different accounts. All of those accounts, some of them are in different names. In some of them, she has a different image. She cuts her hair. She looks different in a lot of the pictures. So it's taken some time for them to piece together all of these pictures, all of these profiles, to try and get some idea of what might have come of Maddie. Now, what they discovered is in recent weeks and months, Maddie has been talking to men online. She's then been arranging to meet those men in shopping centres, in fast food outlets, or just around the shops in this area of Bristol. And sometimes she's been going off with those men, occasionally for days on end. So the thought is now that she came to meet somebody at the shops, something happened, and she hasn't been seen since. And the police are saying they now believe that she probably has been abducted. Her foster carers are saying that she is much loved. They really want her to come back. Avon and Somerset Police are saying, Maddie, if you're looking at this, if you're seeing some of these news reports, please do get in touch with us. We want to know that you're safe. And the police are also saying if anybody has met her, either online or they've met her in a shopping centre or in a fast food outlet, to please call 999 immediately. Maddie is 5 foot tall. She has shoulder-length brown hair, but as I say, she cuts her hair regularly. She styles her hair in different ways, and she also changes her name online. In the past, she hasn't just stayed in Bristol. She's been off around the country with various men. So the fear is that she could absolutely be anywhere. So if anybody sees anybody that looks like Maddie, Avon and Somerset Police are saying, the thing to do is to call 999 immediately.
OK, Jeff, thank you very much indeed. Really worrying 15 days then for all involved. And as Jeff was saying there, anyone with information urged to approach Avon and Somerset Police.
You just can't imagine what the family is going through with this sort of thing. And whatever is going on, I mean, the concern she's been abducted, obviously, is horrific. But if that isn't the case and she is watching or gets that message out, it's just doing something for the sake of the parents, isn't it, and the other family members, just to give them some sort of relief.
Yeah, it's torture for them and, you know, just a really awful situation. Anyway, hope for a swift resolution there.
OK, it is 13 minutes past 6. Let's just bring you up to date with one or two of the other stories. And as we actually mentioned at the top of the show, a Conservative MP has now defended his comments on food banks after saying people use them because they can't cook or budget. Lee Anderson invited all MPs to head to a food bank where he works, where users collect a food parcel. They need also to register for a budgeting and cooking course.
The Cabinet is meeting for a special away day in Stoke-on-Trent to discuss how new legislation announced in the Queen's speech could help to boost the economy. During the trip, the Prime Minister will urge ministers to go faster in delivering ideas to alleviate the cost of living crisis.
Labour MP Stella Creasy has told GB News she suffered sexual harassment whilst at Cambridge University. The MP for Walthamstow said she was threatened with gang rape, and when she complained, college authorities admonished her instead of punishing the abusers. You can watch that exclusive interview with Gloria Di Piero later on today.
Now, if I were to call you woke, would you see that as a compliment or as an insult? Apparently it's dividing opinion.
Which I'm surprised at.
Yeah.
You know, to be called sort of considerate or thoughtful or, even socially aware or anything of that, you know, whatever your politics, it's not a bad thing. Woke, I think, has become a negative term, hasn't it?
There are connotations, aren't there? Well, apparently a third of people think it is an insult to be called woke. A quarter of people, though, think it is a compliment. So which camp do you fall into? Get in touch the usual ways, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at GB News.
I sort of think I know how you're going to respond.
I sort of think we know, yeah. You know, it just goes to show what a divided nation we are in terms of this kind of culture war, really. Which side of the fence do people sit, pro or anti-woke?
You see, I don't like the term culture war.
I don't like either term, if I'm honest. I don't think they're particularly helpful, but they are in common parlance.
Because I don't think I don't think there is a sort of war or anything like that. But I do think there is the whole woke agenda thing, where you just have to be very, very careful about every single word you say in case someone should happen to be offended. I think that's pretty dangerous.
Yeah, I think it's important to be considerate. I think it's also important to be able to get things wrong and own it and say, well, I've learnt more since I said that and I don't agree with it. Or I don't understand why in this day and age so many people get wedded to a certain position and won't move from it, even if, you know, they learn more about certain things. So I've always taken the view, I'll say my opinion, but I reserve the right to change it.
Yeah, absolutely.
As and when I've learned more.
Yeah, I think changing opinion is a positive thing. But it's also the idea that if there are some things you can't say, then people get cut out of the conversation, which I think is probably how a lot of you feel, because it's certainly been our agenda, hasn't it, to make sure that all issues are talked about and all perspectives are looked at and we agree to disagree.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff said by some of our colleagues later on in the day in their opinion shows and people that I really like and get on with, and I don't agree with them.
Yeah.
I don't agree, but it's fine. Doesn't mean I don't like them as people.
All opinions are welcome, and it's important, as you say, to debate in a civilised way. Surely that's the backbone of Britain, being able to have civilised conversation about things.
You would hope
think.
So.
Social media might tell you otherwise, but that's how we approach life anyway.
It is, quite right too. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Let us know what you think.
Now, the big story of the moment, of the era, of course, is the cost of living crisis, and it has unfortunately led to perhaps a surprising story that's emerged out of all of this, and this is the rise of people having to give up their pets. They simply cannot afford to look after them anymore.
Now, staff at the Thornbury Animal Sanctuary in Sheffield say that they're looking after more pets than ever before. Our Yorkshire and Humber reporter Anna Riley has the story.
Thornbury Animal Sanctuary in South Yorkshire is struggling to care for the influx of pets that have been handed over to them by their owners due to the rising costs of living. Helen Connolly is the general manager at the charity. She says the centre in Sheffield has seen a huge increase in dogs and rabbits and has reached maximum capacity.
Currently, we have every kennel full. We've got dogs in foster homes with our volunteers, and staff members have got dogs and cats and rabbits that they've taken on foster, just so that we can take in everything that we can, basically. Cost of living is certainly up there. We've seen people have other commitments that they perhaps didn't have before. The veterinary fees, I think when people have bought dogs through lockdown, they've not kind of factored in that insurance is really expensive for animals, and if something does go wrong and a dog needs an operation, then that can quickly escalate into the thousands.
Thornbury is also feeling the financial pinch, with the animals being brought in getting more and more expensive for the sanctuary to look after. Jed Jenkins-Omar is the fundraising manager at the sanctuary, which relies wholly on public donations.
The rise of cost of living has had an impact, because if you look at our energy bills, for example, last month they're almost double now, so they're touching nearly £3,000 last month. So this winter they're obviously just going to go through the roof, as it's due to increase again. Transportation costs have had an effect on things like animal feed, wood pellets over at our farm. Financially, it's always obviously a struggle for any animal sanctuary. We've had to take on new staff to help with the demand of the animals. We've recently took on a vet, which is the first time we've ever had a vet at Thornbury. So we're really pleased and proud about that, but also it does add additional costs. The team is growing, so that's great, but obviously that does come at a price.
The animal sanctuary is calling on people in the region like Anne Coxton to volunteer their time at the centre.
Staff do a fantastic job, but we do need volunteers, really desperately need volunteers in cattery, kennels, small animals. You know, they can't do everything, so they do need us.
As bills continue to rise, staff at the charity here are urging people to think twice about whether they can afford it before buying or adopting pets. Anna Riley, GB News, Sheffield.
I want to rescue them all. That
Yeah.
tabby cat in there was speaking
Cats
to
are
me.
beautiful.
Really, really, really.
What was it saying?
It was saying, come and rescue me and bring me home with you.
I said what you've got to
Quite
do, though,
tempted.
if you're going to get an animal, it is a big commitment and
Yeah.
it's an expensive commitment. So you've got to weigh all that up, especially at the moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you are in a position
Decision.
to rescue a pet, what a wonderful thing to do. My Timmy's a rescue cat.
Was he?
Yeah,
Timmy?
he's a rescue.
Oh, how is Timmy?
He's very well, thank you. He's about
Aw.
14 now, thereabouts.
Oh, we might be needing to get a kitten then, so that there's no.
Oh, no.
Need
I
an
wouldn't like it.
overlap.
No, there won't be an overlap.
Oh, okay.
He's got another 5 or 6 years left in him,
Okay,
yes. Well, he's pampered, let me tell you.
Aw.
All right, don't go anywhere. Coming up, could Putin invade more European countries? Well, there's a thought. We'll talk to the US's former ambassador to Poland.
First of all, here is your Thursday forecast.
Hello, good morning. I'm Aidan McGivern. A fine start for many of us. Plenty of sunshine around first thing, but there will be further showers in the north, especially northern and western Scotland, where these showers or longer spells of rain will continue during the next couple of days. Low pressure close to Iceland will send a few weather fronts into the north of Scotland, but the front that caused yesterday's wet weather for England and Wales, well, that's well out of the way, and as a result, a fine day to come. Plenty of sunshine during the morning and early afternoon across England and Wales. Bright as well further north, but for Northern Ireland, for northern and western Scotland, there'll be further showers, or even for western Scotland, some more prolonged wet weather at times. A keen breeze here, making it feel cool, but temperatures still mostly around or a touch above average. We're looking at 17 to 20 in the south, 13 to 15 further north. A few showers into Wales and the southwest to end the afternoon and go into the evening, but clear spells for the southern half of the UK. I think Manchester northwards will see thicker cloud through the night and showers or longer spells of rain. That only lasts a few hours, and then by the early hours of Friday, mostly the wet weather is to the north of the central belt, and further south there will be cloudy conditions, but actually a lot of fine weather as we start off Friday. 10 to 12 degrees for many of us. Still a keen breeze, particularly for Scotland, where we'll also see further rain or showers in the north and west of the country. I think brighter skies for southern Scotland, Northern Ireland, northern England, but a lot of cloud around. Sunny skies, though, on Friday afternoon for a large part of the south of England, as well as much of Wales. 21 Celsius in London, feeling pleasant enough with the sunny spells. 14 there for Glasgow. And then into the weekend, high pressure builds quite widely, and that means Saturday looks like a fine day for most. Plenty of warm sunshine. Temperatures are rising as well. However, on Saturday night and into Sunday, that could cause some storms.
Hello, I'm Michelle Jubilee, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Jubilee, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
I just want to say hello this morning. I like saying hellos to people. Michael in Gloucester, morning to you, Michael. Well, you both indeed look very smart, says Michael.
We've got the navy blue memo.
We have got the navy blue memo.
Plan it. It's really weird how that happens on this show.
Very
I was
odd.
obviously thinking of you as I got up this morning, early. Jason in Leeds says, morning, I'm watching with coffee and pancake. Well, that's just showing off. I've got a coffee, but...
Pancake? What have you got on your pancake, Jason? That sounds very nice. Anyway, let us know where you are, where you're watching. Oh, that's what I've got to say, because we do... I don't know if you do it in the weekend. We get a map through showing where the highlights are of where people are watching. And I've got a message on Twitter the other day from someone who's now... I've forgotten your name off the top of my head, but saying, you never give us a mention in the Isle of Man.
Ooh.
And lots of you were watching in the Isle of Man. Yes.
All right, I haven't.
Yes, lovely. So there you go. If you're on the Isle of Man, very, very good morning to you. Thank you for watching or listening. It's very good to have you with us
wherever
today.
you are this morning, stay tuned. There's lots more still to come on today's programme. We're giving a shout-out to all the hard-working nurses because it's International Nurses Day today. Where would we be without them, especially during the pandemic that we've all just survived? And we're going to be speaking to one of them about the most amazing job that they do and those important skills that are needed to do the job.
Indeed so. Also today, we're going to be live at the Royal Windsor Horse Show, and it's believed that the Queen's great-grandchildren, or most of them at least, are going to appear in a horse-drawn carriage. Well, some aren't in the country, Isabel.
Just checking.
Don't pick on the children, it's not their fault.
I'm not picking on the children, but it's a shame they're not here. Anyway, you can join in any of our discussions. As usual, get in touch the usual ways, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at gbnews.
OK, that's what's coming up on our programme. But later on GB News, you can watch Gloria Di Piero's exclusive interview with the Labour MP, Stella Creasy.
So she has revealed that the sexual abuse she experienced at Cambridge University wasn't handled particularly well. Here's a preview of what's in store.
I was in a room with them all and they threatened to gang rape me. It took public humiliation and posters and finally other people coming forward and me collating the evidence of all the notes, the spitting in my room, the rubbish that was thrown at me, the sexual abuse and harassment if I tried to walk into the bar that came from this group of young men.
It's fascinating. Those interviews that Gloria does are fascinating because it really gets under the skin of these politicians. So that's going to be a fascinating watch today.
Yeah, totally unacceptable what Stella experienced, and really important to call it out, and a really hard-hitting interview. Another one, as you say, by Gloria, always fantastic.
Now, as we've been talking about today, the PM has signed a major defence pact with Sweden and Finland, one that could potentially see British troops sent to those nations in the event of an invasion by Putin.
But just how likely is a Russian invasion? Let's speak now to the former US Assistant Secretary of State for Europe, Daniel Fried, who also served as the US Ambassador to Poland. A very good morning to you. Welcome to the programme. Look, it seems highly unlikely that Russia will invade Finland, even though there is this huge border. But then nobody really believed that Russia was going to invade Ukraine.
Well, that's about right. And it really isn't for us in the US or the UK to start telling the Swedes and the Finns that they have nothing to worry about. They do have something to worry about. No, I don't think Putin is going to mount a full-scale invasion. I don't think he has the capacity. But I certainly think that Finland, in particular, having been a part of the Russian Empire, is right to start considering their security. The Russians are perfectly capable of harassment, border incidents, all manner of difficulties, especially if Putin succeeds in subjugating Ukraine, which happily, thanks to the reaction of the UK, US, and Europe, is less likely than it seemed 2 months ago.
Where does this leave the international community now that Britain has made this pledge? I mean, I know Finland is looking to join NATO pretty promptly, but on the basis that that doesn't happen in the immediate term, does this also put pressure on other European countries and also the United States to actually have to step forward to defend these nations if it were necessary?
Well, first, good for the British. I think this was a strong stance, and it was a signal to Putin that the United States, the UK, the West is not going to be indifferent to their security threats to two great European nations. I think the United States has long had an understanding with Finland and Sweden, not a treaty obligation, but an understanding that we do take their security seriously. Now, we will see whether the Finns and the Swedes do decide to make a formal application for NATO membership. It's up to them. But if they make that decision, I certainly would support their rapid accession to NATO. And I think the British statement of support is a sign that there's no window for Putin to do things against the Swedes and the Finns in the interim period.
It begs the question, though, doesn't it, in all of this, how Finland and Sweden are different from Ukraine in terms of the response from the UK. I mean, we were signed up to the Budapest Memorandum, which promised that we would come to Ukraine's defence should they be invaded, and they gave up their nuclear arms on that basis. How much can Finland and Sweden depend on our word? And why is it different? Because the argument has been that we haven't gone in and sent troops on the ground into Ukraine because of the threat of nuclear war. But why is that not the case in Sweden or Finland?
That's a good question. The reason President Biden said we would not send U.S. forces into Ukraine to help defend them was because Ukraine is not a NATO member. Now, Finland and Sweden aren't either, but they are EU members, and there is an EU security clause. It's not as strong as Article 5 of the North Atlantic Treaty, but it's there nevertheless. The difference is it took the West a long time to start to think of Ukraine as European. Now, that's not an easy thing to say, but it's true. A lot of foreign policy experts, a lot of government regarded Ukraine as somehow existing east of a line that was still in our heads. That was a mistake. We see the Ukrainians fighting for European values, our values, democratic values. We need to support them. Just because we don't have a security guarantee, just because Ukraine is not a NATO member, doesn't mean we should hold the door open for Putin to commit acts of aggression against any country. So I'll do what we can for Sweden and Finland and do what we can by way of supplying arms to the Ukrainians so they can defend themselves.
Daniel Freed, it is really good to talk to you and to get your thoughts and expertise. Thank you.
Thanks for...
Coming up, we're going to go through the newspapers. Today we're joined by Dawn Neeson and David Wooding. That's after this.
Hello, I'm Michelle Jubilee, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Jubilee, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
It is 6:35, morning to you. This is Breakfast on GB News. Let's take you through the top stories this morning.
The Foreign Secretary will hold crunch talks with the European Commission on Northern Ireland this morning as ministers decide whether to override parts of the post-Brexit deal. Liz Truss is expected to tell them the dispute over the protocol cannot drag on, as Boris Johnson tells the EU there's no need for what he'll call drama.
A Conservative MP has defended comments on food banks after saying people use them because they can't cook or budget. Lee Anderson invited all MPs to head to a food bank he works with, where when users collect a food parcel, they also need to register for a budgeting and cooking course.
Police are hunting for two men who attempted to kidnap a 2-year-old girl from her mother. The woman reported that she was out with her little girl and their dog in the New Forest when one of the men picked up her child and ran off with her until their dog bit the man on the leg and he let her go. Hampshire Police are asking anyone with information to contact them.
Time to go through the papers now with political editor of The Sun on Sunday, David Wooding, and former editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson. Morning, you two.
Good morning,
nice
gorgeous.
to see you. That was very glam.
Thank you very much. I didn't get the wear a blue memo.
I'm sorry. Well, you're bringing the colour. We're grateful for it.
You look like you're in school uniform. I look like I'm sort of like the bad girl hanging around.
You are the bad girl. You
Really.
are the bad girl. Let's have a look at the Telegraph, Dawn, looking at the PM.
Right, absolutely. It's an interesting day for the papers because no one really agrees on what story is the most important one. The Telegraph, as is the one, have gone with Boris Johnson, and this is Boris's trip to Sweden and Finland, where he has done a deal for a mutual military assistance deal, which means basically he suggested that our troops could be sent to Sweden and Finland, even if the two countries do not join NATO, and they're not NATO members at the moment, let's remember, to protect them from a Russian invasion. Now, this is a British initiative. It's not NATO, which is a very interesting thing. So it's Boris again. Is he proving it? I'm not sure, but being the most go-getting, forward-thinking leader in Europe at the moment. He's the one that...
Well, he is. He really is on
I mean, to be festive, and he is. And that's why in Ukraine, they have posters for Boris and they're flying the Union flag because we are appearing to do the most that we can for them. The thing is, in theory, this is a good thing. But it does raise interesting issues with the whole Russian thing again, doesn't it? And I keep coming back to the fact that Russia has more nuclear weapons than any other country on Earth. And if we are willing to, even though Sweden and Finland are not remember the NATO agreement means that if Russia invades a NATO country, then we all join together to fight back. Even if Sweden and Finland don't join NATO, though, we are willing to send military troops to help them out. Now, surely this is another red flag to Putin and Russia. I mean,
But haven't you? Isn't he one of these guys? We keep saying he only responds to strength, and if you don't turn around and say we are going to defend this, then he's likely to chance his hand.
Well, absolutely. And where does it end otherwise? I mean, we can't let it carry on, can we? Something has to be done. So it's a very interesting, development, and there's a wonderful picture of Boris doing what Boris does very well. Another photo opportunity in a rowing boat this time. The only surprise is he hasn't got a high-vis vest, which is his normal thing.
Oh, yes, he does like a high-vis vest.
But, I mean, obviously, Sweden has been neutral for, like, 200 years, I believe. And it's got one of the largest and best air forces in the world.
Yeah.
Couldn't quite get my head around that one.
Yeah.
No.
And Finland, again, you know, everybody does military service. All the men do military service, don't they? Because, obviously, they're on the border of Russia, that's why. But
yeah,
I mean, it's an interesting development, but it does make you wonder about what happens should Russia decide to invade Finland.
Yeah. Oh, heaven forbid. Closer to home, David, let's talk about the cost of living crisis. Lee Anderson has not covered himself in glory with his perhaps patronising suggestions of how to tackle the crisis.
Yes, well, Lee Anderson is the Conservative MP for Ashfield, incidentally the constituency held by GB News presenter Gloria De Piero for 9 years until the 2019.
And he's a former Labour councillor, isn't he?
Yes. And this is one of those sort of red wall type seats and former Labour stronghold. But he's been decrying the story, which is that Conservatives have been under a lot of pressure on for some time about the growth of food banks, showing that more people are falling into poverty. And he said, well, look, a lot of the reason for this is that people don't know how to cook properly. And in Ashfield, anybody who comes to use food from a food bank will be sent on a course to learn how to cook. Now, there's some truth in that. You can save a lot of money if you know how to cook using basic ingredients. But he's saying you can cook a basic meal for 30p. Well, I'm not sure the present prices you can. I mean, something like 100 out of 700 of the basic cheapo foodstuffs in supermarkets have rocketed. And there's something like 250,000 households more have now gone into food poverty. So he's been roundly branded as insulting, out of touch, disgraceful. I think
I can't cook, right? I mean, I really wish that. I mean, I think it's so important, and we don't really do what it used to be called home economics when I was at school. I don't know what it's called these days, domestic science, whatever. But we tend not to teach these things to children as much as I think we should do, because it is a very, very, especially the way we're going, a very necessary thing in life. And I think he has got a point there. I don't know how he said it, whether it came across as arrogant or whatever. But I mean, you know, the brilliant, amazing Jack Monroe, who does, you know, encourage and tell people how to survive on a very low budget and teaches people to cook. I mean, she's amazing what she does. Now, this is a very similar message, but when it comes from the left, it's treated as a good message, as indeed it is. But when it comes from a Tory, you're talking down to people, you're patronising people, you don't know what it's like to be poor. Now, I get that might be true, but he does actually work with this food bank as well. I'm not defending what he said in any way, shape or form. I think he has a point, and I think it's very important that we do. I mean, I'm talking about myself.
It's the way he said it.
It's the way he said it, Stephen, I get.
I mean, I didn't see the coverage,
no.
but the way it's portrayed that he said it.
Well, it's like George Eustace the other morning recommending that people buy non-branded tinned foods in the supermarkets, and people saying, well, thanks for that tip, George. You know, what do you know about buying? What have you bought in Lidl or Aldi recently?
And Jack Monroe has said that
I
himself.
totally agree. I think the message is right, and I think we saw it, didn't we, with some of the energy companies coming out with their top 10 tips, and everyone was outraged that people suggested they wore an extra jumper.
Yeah.
It's probably good advice.
Yes.
It's just that it's who delivers it.
Who delivers it and how
it isn't going to solve the cost of living crisis. Prices are still going up. You can put another jumper on, but your energy bill is still going to go up.
Is there a point in all of this that you can put on another jumper, or you can, live on whatever it is, casseroles and make food stretch, but people largely don't want to? Do you think that there is a pushback in the way that we didn't post-war?
Well,
post-war, people really did make do and mend.
Exactly.
And we're a bit spoilt now.
We have forgotten
the suggestion's almost offensive.
And how much do we depend on... I'm as guilty as charged on this.
Yeah, me too.
How much do we depend on takeaways?
Oh.
And that's so expensive.
Don't look at me like that, Stephen. I'm
sorry,
I do.
No. Well, no, I think people probably do. See, I never get a takeaway. Never. It's just not on the agenda.
So you can cook properly?
Yeah.
See, I'm really impressed by that. I really wish I could. And I hate myself for being that lazy, but
Dawn, you're not lazy. You work incredibly hard. And a lot of people like you work all the hours. I'm not letting that happen. No, you work all the hours and, quite frankly, after a long day, the last thing you want to do is start, making some stock from a chicken carcass or whatever it might be.
A lot of people are like that, so it's a...
Are you showing some cooking knowledge?
To be fair, I was just stealing that example. I've never made stock, but we were talking about it in the newsroom this morning, and that is one of the sort of things that
you a cook, David?
Pertaining to people.
No, I married a very good cook, so I'm spoiled, and I appreciate the good cooking, and my wife likes it when I like her cooking, so we're all happy.
And you've been married 40 years this year, so I mean, you must like it a lot.
Yeah. No, it's just, I think he makes a valid point, but just not in a very good way.
It's the way he's said it.
Saying you can do it for 30p is actually, I don't think that's feasible. I don't know how you manage that. Dawn, sticking with money, actually, this is the financial... the Mail, front page of the Mail, Dawn.
Yeah.
Windfall tax. We've been told no.
No.
But now, yes.
Yes. Well, I mean, there we go again.
It's like the Vicar of Dibley.
It is, exactly that. It could possibly be another one of those infamous U-turns. Now, Boris Johnson literally days ago was saying, no windfall tax, it will stop our energy giants investing in the country, etc., etc. However, Rishi has said that it's not off the table. Now, this is one of Labour's flagship policies, I believe I'm right in saying, David, that, the cost of living is so much... excuse me, energy bills are going through the roof, that... and the energy companies are making so much money. I mean, last week, BP announced record profits of $4.9 billion for the first 3 months of this year. And Shell unveiled a record gain of $7.3 billion. Meanwhile, as we've just discussed, we're all putting on extra jumpers because we're terrified to turn the heating on, and come the autumn, it's going to get worse. So for the first time ever, though, the Tories and Rishi have said that actually a windfall tax will raise money and it is not off the table, and suggested that it could raise another £2 billion and proceeds used to ease the pain of the expected rise in energy bills in October.
What do you think?
Surely it makes sense.
Would that go down well with the Tory backbenchers, David?
Well, Boris Johnson is looking for ways to try and ease the cost of living crisis, and Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor, came up, as Dawn rightly says, with that idea some months ago. There's a feeling in Number 10 that the Chancellor's gone a little bit native and he's listening too much to the groupthink inside the Treasury, but he's now asked the Treasury to look at this, so clearly he's having to think about it. But will it go down well? It's a difficult one. The Tories will be divided on that, but some people believe that what you should be doing is cutting taxes rather than doing that.
As a Scouser, I'm just wondering whether you think that the Treasury will be saying, calm down. Sorry.
Well, Michael Gove said that yesterday.
Yes. What was that all about?
I mean, he
was it offensive to Scousers?
Well, it's an old joke. We've all got broad shoulders, but it was a business... well, I have. He was also doing an American accent as well. Yeah. So I don't know
Big news.
What he had for breakfast.
It was all just very odd.
Surreal, wasn't it? I know. It's... But maybe, I mean, listening to the backbenchers, maybe they're starting to listen to the voters. That would be a novel thing. After the election last week, maybe they're thinking, actually, people are going to be really suffering and we maybe should...
They've got to do something. I mean, it's just... You just can't leave it.
Well, get rid of the VAT. Scrap the green levies on the energy bills, all of those things, just for a year.
Just for a year. I know it'd make a huge difference. Financial Times, David, look at the Northern Ireland Protocol. Brussels is throwing its toys out the pram.
Yes.
No.
What a surprise.
This one's been simmering along for a while. I mean, the background, of course, is that part of the Brexit deal was that we keep an open border with Northern Ireland because we don't want to compromise the peace process. So there has to be some checks on EU goods coming into the United Kingdom. The problem is, in order to do that, they put an artificial border down the Irish Sea. As a result, the Northern Irish people are finding that there's lumpiness in the transfer of goods and trade, and it's causing all sorts of problems over there. We've now had an election, which in Northern Ireland, the local elections last week, in which Sinn Féin are now get to run the power sharing government, but the unionists are saying, unless you sort this one out, we're not going into power sharing. So it's brought this into sharp focus that something needs to be done. Liz Truss, the Foreign Secretary, is threatening to tear up the Article 16 which means
well, hasn't Suella Braverman, the
Attorney General,
hasn't she just come out with a ruling that says us acting unilaterally on this protocol, in other words, getting rid of it, would be legal?
Yes, and the EU indeed threatened to do it when they were unhappy about the vaccines. The fact that we'd beaten them to some vaccines, they threatened to tear up Article 16 themselves, invoke Article 16 themselves.
In fairness, it's not just Brussels who are throwing their toys out the pram about this. They're Washington deeply unhappy at the suggestion as well. And the question is, how much do we want to rock the boat with America when we're talking about, possible trade war with Europe, when we're trying to get a trade deal with the States? There's a lot at stake, and it's an incredibly complicated
Yes, it is. And what it all boils down to, really, is if you are a Remainer extremist, you would say, well, we all knew this was going to happen when we shouldn't have left the EU in the first place. It's Britain's fault. We signed up to that. If you're a Brexiteer, or your view would be, well, it's Europe trying to punish us for leaving, and they're imposing these overzealously, and they need to just be a little bit more lenient and real. About
well, your views on that will be very welcome. Thank you very much. We're out of time. David, Dawn, thank you. We shall see you a little bit later on, of course.
Now, at 10 to 7, we're going to talk about nurses. It's International Nurses Day, and according to a new poll, the profession is considered one of the 3 most important jobs in the UK.
Yeah, now, Sarah... Oh, I tell you what we need to do.
Our guest has disappeared.
Well, no. She hasn't.
She hasn't?
She hasn't. No, we're going to get her sorted out in just a second. What we need to do, actually, I think would be better, would be to run through some of the headlines for you this morning. Actually, we can start with the whole Northern Ireland thing, because it's such a fascinating issue. And the Foreign Secretary, as David was saying, the Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss, will hold crunch talks with the European Commission on Northern Ireland this morning as ministers decide whether to override parts of that post-Brexit deal. Liz Truss is expected to tell them the dispute over the protocol simply cannot drag on. And the Prime Minister is telling the EU there is no need for what he's calling drama.
In other news this morning, the serial killer, Levi Belfield, has become engaged and has made a formal request for a prison wedding. The Ministry of Justice says Belfield has applied for permission to marry a woman whilst he's serving 2 whole life orders for murdering Marsha McDonnell, Amelie de la Grange and Millie Dowler.
The Mayor of London has announced the first London Drugs Commission to consider decriminalising cannabis and other drugs in the UK. Says Sadiq Khan is on a 4-day tour of the United States. The Mayor has praised what he said were high standards of legalised cannabis farms in the country.
The Royal Mail is planning to up its use of drones for deliveries. It's creating 50 new postal drone routes over the next 3 years and taking over from ferries, air and land deliveries that can be affected by bad weather. The Isles of Scilly and the Hebrides are among the first routes for the new service.
As we were telling you a minute ago, it is International Nurses Day, and we're very pleased that paediatrics nurse for the Hounslow and Richmond NHS Trust, Sarah Glencross, is here with us in the studio this morning. I'm glad I've got a dreadful rash, Sarah. But you must get fed up with that.
Paediatrics, Stephen. No, you're not eligible. You haven't been for some time.
Honestly, I bet there isn't a place you go where someone doesn't say, "Oh, could you just have a look at this for me?"
No, yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
it does happen a lot.
Is it? It must be a passion, though, for you, is it? I mean, it's not a job; it's a vocation, I would imagine.
It is. It's a vocation in that every day is just so interesting, and it's just such a variety and such a varied job. You're never going to be a millionaire. You always realise that. You're not in it for the money. But what I also say to people wanting to get into nursing is you're never going to be out of work. There's always opportunities. And it's never, ever boring. It is a fabulous job.
Now, I'm just making an assumption here, but I'm guessing paediatric nursing, maybe midwifery, are some of the most popular parts of the nursing profession. Is that correct? And there are probably other parts which are undersubscribed. Is that a fair assumption, would you say?
Yeah, I do think it's one of the more popular branches of nursing. But I think what is great with nursing, I think the pandemic showed, even if you want to become a paediatric nurse and you don't quite get onto that section of the course, through doing other routes and nurse apprenticeships, which a lot of the trust and over trust I'm working in now is very keen to grow their own nurses. You can get to where you want to be in nursing. I'm a strong believer in that. And the pandemic showed I went on to do some of the vaccine section, and I'd never nursed adults. And I've gone from looking after very small infants to actually giving injections to the housebound 95-year-olds, which I just found amazing, and vice versa with the redeployment. It was great.
It's interesting, you keep talking about the pandemic. I mean, one thing which that has highlighted, I mean, and not just for nurses, but for all medical staff and for frontline staff, is the amount of work, the amount of pressure you were under, not just to perform, but also to perform in what were perceived as dangerous situations. You know, with the risk of taking something back home and all the rest of it. How hard has it been, now that we're sort of coming post-pandemic, if you like, to actually get your head round what you've been through? Because mentally it must have been a huge strain.
I think it was. I think it, in one way, it was amazing how everybody pulled together. We had not only our nursing teams, but we had lots of voluntary sectors working with us, and even with the supplies. And I remember at one point someone saying to me, we're down to one box of gloves. It was sort of looking at all the procurement issues and everything. But I think looking back, everyone pulled together so well, and we met so many different groups of professions and other nurses and other areas that you never would have before. And I think it just showed how great everybody was.
Yeah, and so much so that I believe there was an uptick in the numbers of people wanting to become nurses. And this new poll showing that the top three sort of respected and valued professions in this country are nurses, doctors and firefighters. And they are those roles where young people can really see, especially as you say after the pandemic, you know, the results of what they do.
Yeah, and I think it's difficult. When I was at school, it was never something that was sold to us. No one came in and spoke to us about nursing. But I think this has highlighted what a great job it is, what an important role it is, and how many ways there are to get into it now. And we're looking to get in work experience, grow our own staff as well, looking at apprenticeships if people feel sort of nursing degrees are a bit of an ominous way to get into it. There's lots of different ways to get into nursing now.
Is there a sense that the NHS, part of the problem we have is that NHS is a funding black hole, and obviously it needs some sort of reform, doesn't it? It's very, because of nurses and the passion we have for nurses particularly, it seems very hard to bring about any sort of reform. Are there things, do you ever go to work and think, actually some things do need to be changed, do need to be altered?
I think, hopefully, we have the new system in place where you've got the integrated care system, so this is what I'm really hopeful for. I know they're going to try and do more joint-up working between health and social care, make sure all of the funding is spread across, so that's my big hope for the future.
Well, there's no doubt it's hard work, it's shift work, it's weekends, it's often unglamorous, dealing with the unglamorous sides to life, but it is absolutely indispensable, and we salute you, and we hope anyone watching this will feel inspired hearing you talk so passionately about it.
I should say, for those on the radio, you are in uniform this morning. Your NHS, do you wear that NHS badge with pride?
I do, yes, yeah. And I think also it's sort of to make sure that it's not just ourselves in the NHS, but it's those working nursing in care homes, our bank workers, our agency workers as well. I think there is so much pride in the NHS and nursing.
Yeah. It is so good to talk to you.
Yeah.
I
think it's a bit like teachers. You can always remember the good teachers, and I think we can all think of a nurse at some point in our lives who we'll never forget.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Well, I see them all the time because I'm type 1 diabetic. So I'm forever, spending time with the DSN or whatever. And they are, quite literally lifesavers.
Yeah.
Even if it's just a friendly smile, whatever, when you go into the hospital, it makes a world of difference. Yeah. It really does. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah.
But really don't go anywhere because, we'll show you that rash in a minute. So, you stay there. Sarah, thank you.
Stay with us. I promise we won't be showing you at home any of Stephen's rashes, but we will have more on the UK's new agreement with Finland and Sweden, and that is, of course, going to potentially see, if there is an invasion, British troops on the ground there. More in a moment.
Hello, I'm Michelle Jubilee, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, And I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Jubilee, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes & Co.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
The Prime Minister vows to send British troops to Sweden or Finland if invaded by Russia.
Good morning, it's 7 o'clock on Thursday, the 12th of May. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Isabel.
Well, this is what's leading the news for you today. The PM has signed a major military pact with the leaders of Sweden and Finland that would see British troops sent to the Nordic countries if they were invaded by Russia. He's the first Western leader to explicitly pledge military support.
Police in Bristol believe that a missing 15-year-old girl has been abducted. Maddie Thomas has not been seen since she left her home in Southmead on the 26th of April, saying she was going to the shops.
Platinum Jubilee celebrations kick off today at the Royal Windsor Horse Show, with most of the Queen's great-grandchildren, including George and Charlotte, expected to ride in a horse-drawn carriage as part of the finale. We'll be down at the show later in the programme.
And you can join in any of our discussions. As always, email us gbnews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us @gbnews.
I just want to start off with a hello again. I like saying hello. I do. It's one of my favourite parts of the show, is saying hello.
Hey up.
Hey up. How you diddling? Margaret, morning Margaret, says, please give a shout out to Suffolk. I noticed Norfolk has been mentioned on occasions.
Oh.
I live in Barrow near Bury St Edmunds, and it's a glorious sunny morning here at the moment. How very nice.
Dave and Julie say we are regular viewers and are saying a happy sunny hello from Bradwell in Newcastle. So wherever you are this morning, a very warm welcome.
I love Newcastle. I've got to say, Chester, Ursula, is watching GB News while I have my peanut butter jam on toast.
Ooh. Oh.
Peanut butter
Quite
and jam.
American, isn't it?
I've not done that for a long time, but it really...
My kids love that, but I can't do that. It's not British enough.
Oh, no.
It's one or the other.
I like a bit of this. And these are my favourite, Isabel. I get a lot of these at the weekend. We always waffle on about them. Jan in Brighton says, it's like seeing old friends again. I'm glad I stumbled on this channel by accident.
Oh, well, don't turn away from our channel now you've found us. Yeah, we've worked together before. So
we have many years I've put up with this one. Many years. And we still can't get away from each other. You're not going grey, are you?
Oh, you're turning me grey.
Are you? Are you putting a little bit of a rinse through?
A little bit of a blonde to try and hide it up. Anyway.
Nothing wrong with going grey, that's what I say. In the book of Proverbs, you know, they say, wear grey hairs like a crown, which is what I'm aiming to do.
Well, they look lovely.
I'm a silver fox.
Shall we move on to our top
Think we
story
better
now?
had.
The Prime Minister Boris Johnson, he's got a full head of blonde hair at the moment.
He
Very
has.
him, actually. He's been in Sweden and Finland, and he has announced that we could see British troops deployed if the Nordic nations were invaded by Russian forces.
Yeah, the PM held press conferences with his Swedish and Finnish counterparts and reiterated the need to defend Europe for generations to come.
Many of us have been paying tribute to the brave men and women who secured victory and peace in Europe 77 years ago. And so it's a sad irony that we've been forced to discuss how best to fortify our shared defences against the empty conceit of a 21st century tyrant.
Well, he also said Britain would very seriously consider deploying nuclear weapons to protect the sovereignty of the two countries.
Well, his visit comes as the two countries consider membership of NATO, with the Finnish president expected to approve his country's membership potentially today.
Well, let's talk to our political correspondent, Tom Harwood, who's here in the studio. I mean, look, this is interesting, Tom, in as much as clearly something needs to be done. The Prime Minister on the international front is leading the way here.
It certainly looks like it, and just looking at the context of Norway and Finland and Sweden in particular, those three countries, Norway of course joined NATO several decades ago, but Sweden and Finland had always been wanting to be seen to be more neutral, less aligned. It's remarkable that in Finland in particular, less than a year ago, only around 20% of Finns wanted to join NATO. Well, now that number is 70%. The war in Ukraine has swung opinion to such a degree, and it's interesting that the first big invitation that these two countries, that Sweden and Finland have issued out to world leaders to sort of try and bolster their defence, has been to the United Kingdom. It does look like the United Kingdom is seen to be at the forefront of this collective defence, of this standing up against Russia.
I was going to say, is this where Putin's strategy has completely fallen apart? Because he wanted to destroy NATO. Sweden and Finland weren't in NATO because they feared there would be repercussions from Russia after what they'd seen in the Second World War. But it's gone completely the other way now.
You can only see this as a massive own goal from Vladimir Putin. Far from trying to scare off the West from NATO expansion or indeed for NATO support. And let's not forget that only a couple of years ago, there were real questions as to whether NATO was relevant in the 21st century. Few European countries were meeting that 2% target of defence spending. In fact, only the United Kingdom was meeting that target in Europe. You'll remember that's something that frustrated greatly the former President Trump of the United States. Well, now many countries in Europe have pledged to spend more on defence. NATO seems more relevant than ever. NATO is expanding. And even a country like Switzerland, which has been so very neutral that is its core sense of being, not joining NATO, but pursuing some sanctions against Russia. I mean, what a turnaround from a more fractured continent in terms of defence to something that is standing very, very firm against Russian aggression.
All of that being said, how much will this provoke Putin to see Finland and Sweden if they do decide to join NATO? Not least because, unlike the last two countries who joined the alliance, which were relatively insignificant in military terms, Finland has an army 3 times the size of our British army. It's going to be a huge contribution to the alliance if they do join.
It certainly is, and the risk, of course, is that while you are joining NATO, up until you have signed on that dotted line, you are rather exposed. And of course, Finland is a country of only a few million people with a very long border that's close to some of the biggest cities in Russia. It's a country that has had war with Russia in the past that feels very threatened. So there's a big risk between the time at which you say you're joining NATO and the time you've actually joined NATO would be that the time that Russia might strike. That's what yesterday was all about, because now the President of Finland and the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom have signed a cooperation agreement. Britain has said we would come to the aid of Finland, even if they are not a member of NATO. We've sort of jumped the gun there. We've committed ourselves to defend the sovereignty and the independence of Finland before they joined NATO.
Sorry to interrupt you, but just on that, does that in some way undermine NATO's ability to absorb them then? Are we sort of saying, don't actually need to join NATO, we've got you? Or do you think that that would just be a security and insurance policy almost?
The security of many dozen countries is much better than the security of just one. What we have provided is a bit of a stopgap, something that is incredibly good, but things can get better. Of course, we're one of the few nuclear powers in the world. That helps as well.
Well, I was going to say that. The fact the Prime Minister actually talked about the nuclear deterrent, I thought was very... I mean, that surely was a comment aimed straight at the Kremlin.
Well, let's not forget that this is what has kept us safe from nuclear conflict over the past 70 years. If only one side in these great ideological battles had nuclear weapons and the other side chose to give them up, well, we wouldn't be seeing this sort of stalemate, we wouldn't be seeing this sort of mutually assured destruction staving off the prospect of nuclear conflict. I think to some extent it's a big, strong argument in favour of a way in which we avoid nuclear war by speaking about the fact that we are armed with nuclear warheads.
I don't want to get party political on it, because I don't think it's appropriate, but we've been told for weeks and weeks and weeks now that we are the laughingstock on the international stage. It's not true, is it?
It doesn't seem like that is a line being used by many opposition politicians anymore. In fact, it's interesting to see how the conversation in Westminster has so shifted away from talking about Ukraine, even away from talking about parties. And now what the opposition wants to talk about is the cost of living crisis, something which is a very real crisis for the people of Britain and something that all parties really do need to grapple with. But yes, when it comes to foreign affairs, it's really quite interesting. Perhaps because of Brexit, Britain has seemed to need to enter a bigger role on the world stage. Perhaps this has been the instigator for why Britain is taking a more proactive role than it otherwise might have done.
And look, I was going to wrap there, but I can't resist, since you brought up the cost of living crisis, just a quick word from you, Tom, whilst we've got you, on some of the reports swirling this morning about the government's possible approach to the cost of living crisis. Some sources saying that they've heard that there might be tax cuts before the end of July, and the Mail front page leading with a suggestion that the Chancellor's now warming to the idea of a windfall tax on energy firms. What can you tell us on that?
I can tell you there are active discussions in government. The Cabinet is having an away day today in Staffordshire, where they will be talking about all sorts of different ways, most of them regulatory, rather than in terms of spending cash. But yes, there will obviously be those proposals from different cabinet ministers bringing forward those tax cuts. For example, we're expected to have income tax rates, tax cuts in 2024. Might those be brought forward? On the other hand, any big sort of spending measure by the government might in and of itself be inflationary, and they don't want to pump prices up yet further. So that's a big risk for the government there. There's other regulatory routes that will, I think, be the primary point of discussion.
OK. Really good to talk to you this morning, Tom. You make sense out of a lot of stuff. Thank you very much indeed. We'll catch you later.
Now, fears are growing for a missing 15-year-old girl. She's been gone for 2 weeks after leaving her foster parents' Bristol home, and police say it is now likely that Maddie Thomas has been abducted and could be anywhere in the country.
Well, let's talk to our South West of England reporter, Jeff Moody, who's live in Southmead in Bristol, close to where Maddie was last seen. Now, look, what more do we know at this stage, Jeff?
Well, Steve, Maddie Thomas went missing on the 26th of April. She left the home of her foster parents just to go to the shops, but never returned. Her foster parents are saying they're extremely concerned about her whereabouts. She is a very vulnerable young adult. Police are conducting all sorts of inquiries. They've been knocking on doors in the area. They've also been examining CCTV, but so far, very little leads. What's been hampering the investigation so far is Maddie's social media presence. She has all sorts of accounts, all sorts of profiles. She's very active online, but a lot of those accounts and profiles are in different names. She has several false names. She often changes her appearance too. Sometimes she cuts her hair short, she dyes her hair too. So it's been quite a job to piece all that social media together to try and get a picture of her whereabouts and her state of mind when she went missing. But what the police have discovered over the last couple of days, looking at all this social media, is that Maddie has been meeting in the past few weeks and months several men that she's met online. She's then met them in shopping centres, shopping malls and fast food outlets in the Bristol area, and sometimes she's gone off with them to other parts of the country for several days. So the fear now is that she has met somebody online, she's then gone to the shops and met them in person and disappeared somewhere with them. We don't know where. Police are saying that if Maddie is looking at any of the media reports on her disappearance, to immediately phone home, because her foster parents are naturally extremely worried for her whereabouts. And Avon and Somerset Police are also saying that if anybody out there that's watching this or other media reports has met Maddie recently, either online or they've met her in the shops or in a fast food outlet and spent time with her, they should come forward too, so that police can really begin to piece together a picture of what might have happened to her. She's 5 foot tall, she has medium length brown hair, but as I say, she does often change her hairstyle and her hair colour, so she might not have that same style now. But if anybody has seen her or has spoken to her online or thinks they've spoken to her online, because as I say, she has several different names that she uses online, police are there to call 999 as soon as they can. She's a very vulnerable adult, and as the days go by, it's been 2 weeks now, as time goes by, police are getting more and more concerned that she has been abducted.
OK, Jeff, for now, thank you.
Our time has just turned 7:15. Let's bring you up to date on the very latest headlines.
The Foreign Secretary will hold crunch talks with the European Commission on Northern Ireland this morning as ministers decide whether to override parts of the post-Brexit deal. Liz Truss is expected to tell them the dispute over the protocol can't drag on, as Boris Johnson tells the EU there's no need for drama.
A Conservative MP has defended his comments on food banks after saying people use them because they can't cook or budget. Lee Anderson invited all MPs to visit a food bank where he works and asks users to collect food parcels but also register for a budgeting and cooking course.
The Cabinet's meeting for a special away day in Stoke-on-Trent to talk about new legislation announced in the Queen's speech and how it could help boost the economy. The Prime Minister will urge ministers to go faster in delivering ideas to alleviate the cost of living crisis.
We're going to return now to our top story, that defence pact that was announced yesterday by Boris Johnson along with the Finland and Swedish leaders. And we can get more on this from the Defence and Foreign Affairs editor at The Telegraph, Con Coughlin. Very warm welcome back to the programme. Good morning to you. What did you make of this agreement yesterday?
Well, I think it's a very, very exciting agreement, actually, to have these two countries coming into the NATO alliance, which is the ultimate goal. And I think it's very good that Britain is standing up and saying, look, during the interim, while you go through the application process, you can rest assured that if Russia and Vladimir Putin try to threaten you, we will stand by you. Now, I think the only issue with this is, do we have the military equipment that we need to provide that kind of defence security? That's quite a big question.
I mean, would you see this as like a bridging loan, if you like, until the NATO membership is approved?
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I think when countries like Finland and Sweden, that for decades and for different reasons have taken great pride in their neutrality, decide that actually they now need to come into the NATO alliance because of the aggression we're seeing from Russian President Vladimir Putin, then they do need some kind of security guarantees in the meantime. And Britain still is, one of the major powers, European powers within the NATO alliance. So for Britain to say, we are with you, we will help you defend and protect your interests, if there is any threat materializing from Russia, will give them a sense of confidence going forward. So it's a good thing. And I also hope to see other European NATO states, France and Germany and other powers, making similar commitments. And I suppose the takeaway from this is just another example of how Boris Johnson is providing leadership amongst the Europeans that we need to make Putin realise that Europe is united in confronting his aggression.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think he'll be widely applauded for his foreign policy. The question mark, as I think we sort of hinted at there, is domestically how he would fund this. Of course, we contribute to NATO as a percentage of our GDP. We're funding lethal aid that's going to Ukraine already. How exactly are we going to pay for this support that we've pledged for to Finland and Sweden? And, you know, can we actually put our money where our mouth is?
Well, I think we need to have a proper discussion about this. At the moment, Downing Street and the government are saying, well, look, we did a defence review last year. We gave the military a £24 billion uplift to buy new equipment and restructure. But that was before Ukraine. That was before the invasion. And the whole security environment in Europe has changed beyond recognition. And of course, what the Russians are using primarily in their invasion are tanks and heavy artillery warplanes. Whereas we have tilted towards future technologies, cyber warfare and things like that in space. So I think we need to have a proper debate. Ben Wallace is said to have warned the Prime Minister that with inflation rising, we could fall below the 2% of GDP minimum spending requirement for the military unless there is extra money. But I think we need to be more ambitious than that. The army is now going down to its smallest size since the 1700s. How can we be doing this at a time when the threat environment has never been more grim in Europe? So I think we need to have a really grown-up debate about this. And I think people need to understand that to protect our standard of living, we need to have a strong military.
I think a lot of people would agree with you on that. Con Coughlin, it's really good to talk to you this morning. Thank you.
Stay with us. Coming up, we've got all the top stories from the back pages today with Paul Coit, including Ukraine's big return to the football field last night. And we've got a very special guest this morning.
He has. First, so here's your forecast.
Hello, good morning. I'm Aidan McGivern. A fine start for many of us. Plenty of sunshine around first thing, but there will be further showers in the north, especially northern and western Scotland, where these showers or longer spells of rain will continue during the next couple of days. Low pressure close to Iceland will send a few weather fronts into the north of Scotland, but the front that caused yesterday's wet weather for England and Wales, well, that's well out of the way, and as a result, a fine day to come. Plenty of sunshine during the morning and early afternoon across England and Wales. Bright as well further north, but for Northern Ireland, for northern and western Scotland, there'll be further showers, or even for western Scotland, some more prolonged wet weather at times. A keen breeze here, making it feel cool, but temperatures still mostly around or a touch above average. We're looking at 17 to 20 in the south, 13 to 15 further north. A few showers into Wales and the southwest to end the afternoon and go into the evening, but clear spells for the southern half of the UK. I think Manchester northwards will see thicker cloud through the night and showers or longer spells of rain. That only lasts a few hours, and then by the early hours of Friday, mostly the wet weather is to the north of the central belt, and further south there will be cloudy conditions, but actually a lot of fine weather as we start off Friday. 10 to 12 degrees for many of us. Still a keen breeze, particularly for Scotland, where we'll also see further rain or showers in the north and west of the country. I think brighter skies for southern Scotland, Northern Ireland, northern England, but a lot of cloud around. Sunny skies, though, on Friday afternoon for a large part of the south of England, as well as much of Wales. 21 Celsius in London, feeling pleasant enough with the sunny spells. 14 there for Glasgow. And then into the weekend, high pressure builds quite widely, and that means Saturday looks like a fine day for most. Plenty of warm sunshine. Temperatures are rising as well. However, on Saturday night and into Sunday, that could cause some storms.
Hello, I'm Michelle Jubilee, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Jubilee, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Morning to you. It's 7:24.
It is.
Got to say hello, Anne and John.
Yeah.
Haven't heard of them. Here we go. Anne and John are watching from Jesus Pobre on the Costa Blanca. Good start to the morning. Keep up the good work. It's a very good place to live, is Jesus Pobre.
Najma has said that she's watching from Spain. Carol said hello from Joburg, and Glynis from her caravan in Dumfries and Galloway.
Yeah, but if you live in Jesus Pobre, the oldest people in the world. It's the longest lifespan in the world in Jesus Pobre.
Right. Oh, right. So long life guaranteed on the sunny Costa del Sol.
Plus a lovely market. So morning to you, Anne and John.
Stay with us. Lots more still to come on this morning's programme. New planning reforms mean that neighbours could veto your house extension. We'll be speaking to a property expert about how successful or popular those new rules might be.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Also today, we're going to be live at the Royal Windsor Horse Show in about an hour's time. You're looking forward to that, aren't you?
Yeah.
It's all the pageantry from the start of the Jubilee celebrations.
Gallop through history, I believe, and some of the Queen's great-grandchildren are going to be there as well. Join in any of our discussions. As usual, email us, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at gbnews.
Now, let's have a look at all the sports stories for you this morning. Paul Coyte is here. Pinch my seat, Paul.
Yeah, I know. It's quite comfortable, actually.
Do you like it?
You know what? I'm feeling quite comfortable here. Is that all right? Shall I not get used to it?
No, you can do. You're all right. We'll have a day off.
I'll tell you, I've got to tell you about sports. Celtic, firstly, congratulations to Celtic, Scottish Premier League champions. They won 3 out of the last... they actually had a terrible start. So they've got new manager come in from Australia, Ange Postecoglou, who came in, and it started off very badly, people not expecting anything, and then it turned round and they've done fantastically. 31-game unbeaten run. They're the champions. They're looking probably across Glasgow because... we've got Rangers are going to be playing in the Europa League. They're playing in the final against Frankfurt in a couple of weeks. But at the moment, Celtic, they're the champions. So congratulations to them. So they're very well with their 1-1 draw yesterday. Another few bits and pieces. Do I seem a bit nervy with you today?
Nervy a little bit?
Yes.
Why is that?
You'll find it. It's a game tonight. It's just making me a bit edgy, but I'm trying to be calm about it.
OK.
Ukraine... national team played a friendly against Borussia Mönchengladbach yesterday. Obviously, the most important thing is that Ukraine are now playing football again. They've got their World Cup game against Scotland, which is coming up, which is on June the 1st, which is the qualifier for the World Cup, which has been moved for obvious reasons. So the winner of that game would then go through to play Wales 3 days later, and whoever wins that goes to the World Cup. But Ukraine, it was all done for the charity, and a lot of money was raised, and any Ukraine nationals were allowed into free as well. But it's good to see them playing football yesterday.
isn't it? I mean, and you know, for national pride and things, it must make a huge difference. I know they're an incredibly proud nation, but to be back on the world stage in this sort of arena as well must be really important.
Absolutely right. But the thing is, what Scotland have got to realise is that obviously they've got a really important game against them, but the whole of the world is going to be against them in this game because everybody's going to be cheering on Ukraine. So they're going to have to be professional about the job. That's coming up in a couple of weeks anyway.
Yeah, that will be a tough one.
But
go on.
Spurs tonight against Arsenal. So I've brought a friend in.
Have you?
That's OK. I thought someone who scored more goals for Spurs than any other during one season, which is still a record to this day. And even...
Knows his onions, then?
Yeah, I would say so. You know, knows where the onion bag is. the great Clive Allen. Clive?
Good morning.
You're a little less nervous, probably, than I am. You know,
I am, yes. You just got to relax, Paul. I always say that to you. Don't worry. Don't worry, although it is probably one of the biggest games that Arsenal and Spurs have played for so many years, because looking forward, certainly for the future, it is an incredibly important game and 3 points at stake.
Can you give some idea, and Stephen, this is such a huge game, and the atmosphere is like nothing else. I mean, we've talked about Celtic, and we know the Old Firm derby, how big that is, Celtic Rangers. But when it comes to derbies in England... I mean, you've played in loads of derbies, but where does this rank and what does it feel like to play in these games?
It's quite an incredible game. I think you realise how important it is to both sets of supporters. It's the game, if you're an Arsenal or Spurs supporter, you look for when the fixtures come out at the start of the season. When are we playing against the Arsenal? When are we at home? And certainly, I think this one is going to be so important because of the new stadium. Absolutely full house. A game that was delayed as well because of COVID restrictions, and the initial fixture was called off. So it's quite ironic that it's now become a Thursday before literally the end of the season, and how important it is for both sides.
Because it was a strange one, wasn't it? And Arsenal had got the game called off, which is a very rare thing. There were a certain amount of COVID cases, but the thing is there was a lot of that going around in the Premier League at that time. But there was a lot of problems, and there was a lot of arguments about the fact that it was called off in the first place.
Yeah, I think, there was a lot of ill feeling at the time, purely because they actually got the game cancelled, which a number of people thought it was unfair. But it's just heightened, I think, the intensity going into tonight's game.
Now, the whole thing, it's all about top four, Stephen, as you know. And we've got Arsenal there are 4 points above Spurs. Spurs absolutely need to win, don't they, Clive? If not, it's pretty much going to be Arsenal then in the Champions League.
Yeah, and it's just so important, that Champions League qualification for finances, for the planning for both clubs going forward into next season, the recruitment, what players they're going to be bringing in, and what finances they will achieve by qualifying for the Champions League. So it's just another North London derby.
Just another one. They're always fun to enjoy.
Yeah, blimey, that, you're so chilled. You're so chilled.
I've played them many times, Stephen, so it's a case of actually having to stay quite calm.
Is it pointless to ask you for a prediction?
No.
I'd say yes, it probably is pointless, yeah.
I'm happy to predict that Spurs will win 2-1.
What are they like to play in, though? To actually... the difference, because you've been a coach in these games, you've played in them, and also watched them as fans as well. So what is the difference? Are you going to say, like most ex-players would be, it's so much easier when we're playing in them because at least we can affect what's going on?
Well, that's right. The intensity is incredible. Obviously, normally the speed of the game is heightened even more than that of a Premier League game. And as a coach, yes, you stand on the side, you're trying to influence the players, but it's the players that have to perform. So it's always an exciting occasion, but very, very tense.
Lovely. Lovely, love it.
Calm down, Paul. Relax.
Okay, no, I'm going to be absolutely fine. So, would you mind? Thank you very much. The state of me, by the way, when I come in tomorrow morning.
Can't wait.
Just hope that there's something for Spurs.
I can't wait to see you tomorrow. Oh, look, brilliant stuff. Good to see you, Paul. Clive, thank you very much indeed. Joy to meet you.
And let's not forget, there's a really special penalty shootout.
There is,
There is, of course. We've got Riley, who came in to see us yesterday. So, I mean, he could take a leaf out of Clive's book, and so that's all planned. That's all ready to go. So, I mean, as if it's not nervous enough for me as it is with this game, we're going to be thinking of little Riley as well, who's going to be out taking the penalty. Yes, of course I will. Yeah, of course I will.
Gets on.
Yeah,
lovely.
Right, stay with us. We're taking you through the papers in just a moment. We're joined again by Dawn Neeson and David Wooding. See you in a moment.
Hello, I'm Michelle Jubilee, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Jubilee, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
$7:35, good morning to you. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Isabel. Top stories for you now.
The Foreign Secretary will hold crunch talks with the European Commission on Northern Ireland this morning as ministers decide whether to overwrite parts of the post-Brexit deal. Liz Truss is expected to tell them the dispute over the protocol cannot drag on. As Boris Johnson tells the EU, there's no need for what he'll call drama.
Police are treating the disappearance of a teenage girl in Bristol as child abduction. 15-year-old Madison Thomas, known as Maddie, hasn't been seen since she left her foster parents' address in the Southmead area 15 days ago, saying she was going to the shops. They're appealing to anyone with any information to come forward.
The Cabinet is meeting for a special away day in Stoke-on-Trent to discuss how new legislation announced in the Queen's speech this week could help to boost the economy. During the trip, the Prime Minister will urge ministers to go faster in delivering ideas to try and alleviate the cost of living. And the serial killer Levi Belfield is engaged and has requested a prison wedding. The Ministry of Justice says Belfield has applied for permission to marry a woman who's been visiting him whilst he's serving 2 whole-life orders for murdering Marsha McDonnell, Amelie de Lagrange and Millie Dowler.
Well, let's go through the papers for you this morning. Once again, with political editor of The Sun on Sunday, David Wooding, and the former editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson. Morning, both. You've swapped sides. Dawn's gone off me.
I thought,
Girl
yeah,
gang.
absolutely.
Got a girl gang.
Yeah, and I just want to say thanks, David, for the squeaky chair.
Oh, yeah, it's a very squeaky one. David, let's have a look at the Mail. Should have been working from home.
Yes, this story is going on and on. And Jacob Rees-Mogg is the man who's leading the charge here, and he's now at war with Dave Penman, the leader of the First Division Association, which is the Sir Humphreys Union.
Oh, yeah.
And they're accusing him of being passive-aggressive. What he did the other week was he went round and left a little note on some official's desk saying, I'm sorry you weren't here when I called. Maybe we should see you again. I did a story the other week about him going down to the Serious Fraud Office. They've got fantastic offices overlooking Trafalgar Square, cost a fortune to rent. And he was told that the lease was about to be come to an end in a week's time, and they had 24 hours in which to renew it. So he ran down Whitehall, went into the building, and found there was nobody there. And he said, why are we paying all this money for when nobody's there?
Yeah.
So he's now talking about moving them outside London. Well, this is hotting up a bit. He's saying that some people are taking Mondays and Fridays off. It's a shorter working week. The unions say, well, it's a different, more flexible lifestyle brought in after COVID. But rightly, Rees-Mogg says, well, why? There's no pandemic.
I think the problem with the work from home argument is that it sort of puts all work in the same category, and I think there have to be different jobs that this just clearly doesn't apply to. And I think probably the civil service, most people would agree, isn't necessarily appropriate. You want people to be able to deliver your passports and driving licences on time.
This is the issue. People are suffering.
Visas from Ukraine, whatever it might be. If sort of society grinds to a halt, but if there are jobs that can be done efficiently from home, then we shouldn't be preventing people from that, should we?
No, that's true. But there are issues, of course, with the economy, because when you don't go into the office, you're not going out to the sandwich shop or the coffee shop and buying things, and you're not using public transport. So the whole economy is stagnating.
I just think people need to be honest about it, and I can be honest about it. I am naturally a lazy person. And if I
You worked from home, didn't you?
I did work from home for 6 months, yeah. But if I don't have to get my backside off the sofa to come into work, then I would just... I wouldn't get as much done.
You were sitting in your PJs watching Loose Women or something, or possibly something on GB News, which is much more interesting.
But this is... So I think people should get off their bums and get back to the office.
You know what, though?
I do.
Can I just say, we presented a show together. You were from home and I was in the studio. That was right at the beginning of the pandemic. You still did your job just as well as you did from the studio. You might consider yourself a lazy person, but you're still capable of working from home.
I didn't bother to put trousers on.
As if they're
too much information.
I know, too much detail. I don't know. It comes down to this argument, and I've said it before on this programme. I think sometimes we have a tendency to, lower the bar to everybody's lowest common denominator. There's plenty of people who are adult, responsible, especially people who want promotions or whatever it might be, who can work from home and have a bit of a better balance, my view. Let us know what you think at home, anyway.
Get off your backsides.
Anyway, blah, blah, blah.
Team Stephen on this one.
Yeah. Dawn, can we talk about Wagatha Christie, this trial? I mean, it's awful to enjoy.
Yeah, you picked it, Dawn.
I know, but come on.
Anyone else enjoying it? Show of hands.
Really, are you?
Oh, come on, it's a bit salacious. Can't help it.
I sort of hate myself, but it is like watching a car crash, isn't it? And this has gone to court to defend reputations.
Yeah.
No.
Any case, this is the ongoing libel case between Rebecca Vardy and Colleen Rooney. And Rebecca Vardy is the one that's actually brought this to court, incredibly, considering she was in the witness box yesterday for 5 hours being cross-examined, which involved reading some of her WhatsApp messages out. Most of which are in language that your mother would not like you using, Stephen. It has.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. Indeed, yes. And this is to protect her reputation, remember. Just keep telling yourself that. But the funniest thing was the barristers reading these WhatsApp messages out.
Oh.
I mean, it's really... only case. And poor Wayne Rooney, obviously Colleen's husband, who's defending this, is trailing his wife into court every day. What makes it even worse, she's got her foot in an air boot because she broke a bone in her foot in March, I believe it was. So she's got a foot in an air boot. Wayne's trailing her in, looking very sad, lost and lonely. Rebecca's surrounded by these big burly security guards, and it's all over one tweet in 2019. Where Colleen... stop shaking your head, Stephen, you know you're fascinated. Where Colleen alleged Rebecca had been selling stories about her to the newspapers.
I just think this is a case where people have a lot of money and not enough sense.
The court case is costing about $3 million. The girls have taken millions of pounds to get...
And who are the winners, Dawn? The lawyers.
The lawyers. And you know what? You can solve this just by banging their silly heads together and saying, get over yourselves.
If they're so determined, I just think... I'd have so much more respect for them if they shook hands and said, right, well, this is all a mess, let's shake hands, and the £3 million we would have spent on the court case, let's give it to charity.
Exactly.
There you go.
Oh, they've got so much money that they can probably do that as well. I'm enjoying it.
And like the Johnny Depp Amber Heard case,
that's awful.
Nobody's going to win this.
No, the only winners are the lawyers.
No. David, iPods are no more.
I know. After 20 years, the iPod is doomed. We're all streaming. There were 450 million of these made now, but they're being outnumbered by people using it on the phone.
Yeah, I'm surprised they're still making them, to be honest.
Same.
I mean, well, if you go back, I remember having a Walkman, which is when you used to
So do I.
a tape recorder. Then I was really posh and got a CD player.
You got a
portable
Discman.
A Discman. And then the iPod came up, this little tiny thing. And, of course, what happens if you've got all your music on there and you won't be able to replace it when it goes?
Well, it's like my CD collection for the car. I've got nowhere to put my CDs on anymore in my car. And I'm like, I've got this collection of all my favourite songs. I know every single song in the album, in the order, and now I can't play them anywhere.
Yeah.
No,
It's the same with our iPods.
These things its technology is moving so quickly because I moved from vinyl to CDs, and now CDs are obsolete almost. But vinyl have come back, so maybe the iPod will come back.
Maybe.
Who knows?
Maybe. But I mean, things for your car and things, you could just load your iTunes or whatever onto a little
But not my CDs.
memory
I'd
stick.
probably have to pay for them all over again through iTunes. I've already
No, you
got
could just
my
upload them
Lamar
up on
and
the
whatever else it is, ABBA Greatest Hits. Oh, I just love it.
Just
in my car.
upload them onto your iTunes on your computer.
Oh, this is way over my head.
But you don't own them then, do you? It's nothing like sort of getting a nice vinyl record out or even a CD.
You see,
When they used to have the lyrics inside,
Yes,
then you could
I know.
read out
And
all
you
the
can always
lyrics.
check your lippy as well at the same time.
Win-win. Dawn, can we talk about bonuses? Employers are talking about using these to try and stop inflation-busting pay deals. Is the Bank of England going to approve of this suggestion?
Well, this is a curious story. Bonuses stand at the highest since 2013 as a share of earnings, as employers seek ways to remunerate workers facing higher living costs. Now, look, this in theory is like, OK, inflation is going to wipe us all out this year. It's horrific. However, this is basically employers saying, we're not actually going to give you a pay rise or pay you what you're actually worth. We're going to give you a bonus instead. I just feel, again, that it's actually the companies trying to get round
It's what they've done
their workers.
But it's what they've done in the city for a long time, isn't it? For decades.
Yeah,
but it has implications for mortgages and things as well. It's much harder to get a mortgage with including your bonus. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's, it's getting around inflation. We all know we've got to do something to tackle it. I'm just not sure this is the right way to go about it. And I do think it gives a lot of companies, and let's face it, they're not all as brilliant as some employers, say, right, OK, we'll just give them a bonus and not give them a pay rise, and that's it, they go away. And it's like, we're all struggling at the moment, so this one makes me very nervous indeed.
Yeah, well, I know what you mean.
Might be the answer to working from home. Your bonus increases if you get off your backside.
Yeah.
Get into work, yeah.
Yeah, maybe so. But that might be an idea, David. Might be an idea. Now, this is one. I bet this is going to appeal to a lot of you out there. Back pain. Because if you get back pain, it's so debilitating. My dad's really suffering at the moment, actually. Taking ibuprofen is not going to help, according to the Express.
Or any of these painkillers, which are quite common, according to this story, because what they do is they stop the inflammation, and the inflammation caused when you've got a problem is what stops long-term pain. And this study in Canada shows that people who didn't take these tablets didn't develop long-term pain. They had the pain in the short term, but they didn't develop long-term pain. And people who are taking these, it doesn't solve the problem because the inflammation is the thing which heals it, because nature inflames around the points of it. That's the complicated explanation to it. But it also says in the Express here that chronic pain is suffered by a quarter of people in the United Kingdom, a quarter of people, and half of them are constantly on these opiate-type drugs.
Yeah, that's something Eamon's talked about a lot, actually, because, of course, there was a period when he was suffering from really acute... Can you have acute chronic pain? Probably not. Really bad chronic pain. And he would be messaging, in the middle of the night, and he found this whole community of British people all awake, suffering pain. Awful.
Yes. Awful. It stops you sleeping. It's horrific.
Brilliant interview with a lady who has been on such chronic pain that she became addicted to opioids as painkillers, and she's now being weaned off them, causing all sorts of problems. And she's helped sort her pain and the mental issues around it by going cycling. And a lot of doctors are now prescribing physical activity to cope with pain, because it's not only gives you physical health, but it helps your mental health and makes you more resilient to dealing with it. So
they always say that to girls, don't they, with period pain? Actually exercise eases it,
absolutely,
even if it's the last thing you feel like doing.
Mind you, maybe they should rename it, because, when I said ibuprofen, and I heard people in the gallery going, ibuprofen.
I did a funny face. I was like, what are you talking about? Ibuprofen.
No, it's ibuprofen.
David?
Well, I've always said ibuprofen, but now you've made me wonder about it.
I'm Team Stephen all day. Sorry.
Oh, my gosh, really?
Yeah. I'm saying...
I know someone who calls it...
Is that American or something?
I just can't talk proper.
See, I was told that Roman Abramovich, as we call him.
Oh, yeah, Abramovich.
Yeah,
I know.
So, you know... Hey,
it's awful when you have to relearn the pronunciation of something.
Pronunciation.
Oh, here we go. Potato.
Touché.
There you go. Yes, I know someone who calls it ibuprofen. They miss out the P altogether.
Right.
There you go.
I think I'm suspicious. I think it's American the way you said it, but I might be wrong.
Ibuprofen.
Yeah, that sounds American.
My mum can't say aquarium. Just
what did she say?
Aquarium.
Oh.
Ooh. There you go. Sorry, Mum.
I knew someone who had a very significant problem with a dado rail, but that's a different story altogether. Absolutely true.
Stephen!
I swear to God, it's true. Anyway, we shall catch with you later on.
It's not 9 o'clock in the morning yet.
No, I didn't say anything wrong.
Dado rails. Easily done.
I just have a filthy mind. Sorry.
You do.
There we go. Right.
We're not getting Jeremy Hunt on the show.
Stop!
David.
I'm going to let you take this one away.
It is 7:48. Let's bring you up to date with the headlines. The UK economy grew by 0.8% between January and March. That's according to the Office for National Statistics, down from a growth of 1.3% in the previous quarter.
The Foreign Secretary will hold crunch talks with the European Commission on Northern Ireland this morning as ministers decide whether to override parts of the post-Brexit deal. Liz Truss is expected to tell them the dispute over the protocol cannot drag on, as Boris Johnson tells the EU there's no need for what he'll call drama.
The Royal Mail is planning to up its use of drones for deliveries. It's creating 50 new postal drone routes. I love this. I don't know why it's going to take 3 years to do. They're going to take over from ferries, air and land deliveries that can be affected by bad weather. The Isles of Scilly and the Hebrides are amongst the first routes for the new service. Fantastic. You're quite a horsey person, aren't you?
I do like a gallop through history, which I believe is what's happening today, because Platinum Jubilee fever officially starts here. It's not long now, of course, until those big celebrations. And now, 4 days of celebrations are beginning today with the Royal Windsor Horse Show, which is kicking off the festivities in Windsor, believe it or not.
Yeah. Now, it's been reported that 10 of the Queen's 12 great-grandchildren will attend in a horse-drawn carriage as part of the finale. Rosie Wright is there for us this morning. It's going to be quite a day, Rosie, quite a number of days.
And a glorious one too. We couldn't have better weather for this. The Queen, of course, right now in residence at Windsor Castle. You can just see it there. And this is the only time in the year when the private grounds are open to the public for the 4-day show. And there's quite a lot of excitement and anticipation. The Queen has come to the show every year since it started, and she's got 41 horses and ponies competing in the next 4 days. Of course, it's not far. There's lots of people hoping that she might make an appearance today. I'd like to introduce you to someone taking part in all of the celebrations. This is Captain Johnny. Thank you very much for talking to us.
No problem.
Just explain your role and your responsibility today.
So we are King Street Royal Horse Artillery. We fire horse-drawn guns for every occasion of state, so birthday, state opening of Parliament. Yogi here was on parade for Queen's birthday a couple of weeks ago. And we're here to do the musical drive as part of the Jubilee celebration, so we're very excited.
Lots of celebrations underway. We're sort of in the stables here, and you're currently in residence as well, in tents here. Can you take me through, and we can have a look at some of the preparations that have been underway? I was very amused. That was Yogi, and then here we've got the horse, less excitingly, Paul. But lots of horses being looked after, making a bit of a noise as well. Just talk us through the kind of preparations that you do with them.
Yeah, so they're about to go out on exercise this morning. Be very light, just so they're ready for this evening's performance.
Just make sure our cameraman doesn't walk in.
Yeah, they're just about to go out, so they'll come back, have some lunch, and then soldiers will start getting them ready this evening, grooming them and making them look nice and shiny for this evening's performance.
So these horses are going out on exercise.
Yeah.
So the way you described it to me earlier was that they would be warm for later.
Yeah. So when they're in harness, they need to have done a little bit of exercise beforehand. So it's just to make sure they don't have any injuries and they're fit and ready to go when we strap the guns on because they're quite heavy.
And the day started really early and didn't really finish until very late last night. Doing loads of preparations in here. Come and have a look. So what's going on in here?
So in here's all of the saddles and the harness that we strap the guns to the horses with, and obviously the saddles. These are original sort of 1900 pattern that we used to use in World War One. They're still all original, so everyone's in here till late last night cleaning all off the sweat and stuff, making sure it's ready to go for the next day. And it is a bit of a maelstrom in here in the evening with everyone from the commanding officer down to the newest gunner in there with polish and cleaning it all off, because as you can see there is a lot of kit to get through.
How much time, how much preparation has gone into something like preparing for what you'll do today and over the next 4 days?
I mean, months. We know we practice what we do at the Windsor Horse Show twice a week, all year round pretty much, and we're constantly rehearsing for parades and stuff. So it's a year-round, never-ending preparation. Putting a time on it. We're constantly preparing.
And you were working for the state opening of Parliament. Just talk us through that.
Yeah, so that was pretty special. We got to do a galloping salute in Hyde Park in the morning, so there's nothing more amazing than having 81 horses out galloping all at the same time with the guns. And it's just a privilege to be involved in any sort of state ceremonial stuff like that. It's part of our history and it's wonderful.
Johnny, thank you very much for talking us through it. Of course, crucially, the real sadness of Tuesday was that for the first time in nearly 60 years, the Queen wasn't there to take part. As I mentioned, lots of people very expectant, very hopeful that she might make an appearance today. If she does, of course, we'll bring that to you here.
Oh, do let us know. Yes, thank you very much for that, Rosie. And it's really sort of setting the scene for the kind of anticipation that the nation is feeling ahead of the Platinum Jubilee, getting us all excited. I do love... Yesterday we had the agricultural show, didn't we? Today it's the Royal Horse Show. It's sort of very British traditions and they are fun. They're great fun and sort of summer things as well. So if you are attending that today... My mother-in-law's going along to that today.
Is she?
Yeah, so enjoy it if you're going and let us know if you spot any of the royals or indeed those... royal great-grandchildren. 10 out of 12 is not a bad lineup, alleged to be in this gallop through history, all in, I think, one carriage or perhaps a series, quite a large carriage to fit 10 in.
They are calling it a gallop through history. The highlight of the event, though, is coming from the Household Cavalry.
Mm-hmm.
So
Tell me more.
I am told. The Household Cavalry claim they are the highlight of the Royal Windsor.
I'm sure they are.
Whereas that gentleman we're talking to was Royal Artillery.
Look, lots of you have been getting in touch this morning. Thank you for keeping those views coming in. We've been talking earlier. We asked you whether you found the term woke offensive or if you thought it was a compliment. Julia said, I would be highly offended if I was referred to as woke. David in Lincolnshire says, the fact is that just because someone disagrees with what's said doesn't mean that they are right.
Yes. I was only half listening to that. Paul says, I wouldn't be happy if I was called woke. I look on these people as professional offence takers, and I sort of agree with that.
Well, a third of people think it's an insult and a quarter a compliment, according to a report out today. Keep your thoughts coming in. We're going to take a quick break, and after that, we'll be talking about the Prime Minister's recent trip to Scandinavia. First, here's your forecast.
Hello, good morning. I'm Aidan McGivern. A fine start for many of us. Plenty of sunshine around first thing, but there will be further showers in the north, especially northern and western Scotland, where these showers or longer spells of rain will continue during the next couple of days. Low pressure close to Iceland will send a few weather fronts into the north of Scotland, but the front that caused yesterday's wet weather for England and Wales, well, that's well out of the way, and as a result, a fine day to come. Plenty of sunshine during the morning and early afternoon across England and Wales. Bright as well further north, but for Northern Ireland, for northern and western Scotland, there'll be further showers, or even for western Scotland, some more prolonged wet weather at times. A keen breeze here, making it feel cool, but temperatures still mostly around or a touch above average. We're looking at 17 to 20 in the south, 13 to 15 further north. A few showers into Wales and the southwest to end the afternoon and go into the evening, but clear spells for the southern half of the UK. I think Manchester northwards will see thicker cloud through the night and showers or longer spells of rain. That only lasts a few hours, and then by the early hours of Friday, mostly the wet weather is to the north of the central belt, and further south there will be cloudy cloudy conditions, but actually a lot of fine weather as we start off Friday. 10 to 12 degrees for many of us. Still a keen breeze, particularly for Scotland, where we'll also see further rain or showers in the north and west of the country. I think brighter skies for southern Scotland, Northern Ireland, northern England, but a lot of cloud around. Sunny skies, though, on Friday afternoon for a large part of the south of England, as well as much of Wales. 21 Celsius in London, feeling pleasant enough with the sunny spells. 14 there for Glasgow. And then into the weekend, high pressure builds quite widely, and that means Saturday looks like a fine day for most. Plenty of warm sunshine. Temperatures are rising as well. However, on Saturday night and into Sunday, that could cause some storms.
Tonight on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners.
Hello, I'm Michelle Jubilee, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes & Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Jubilee, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes & Co.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
The Prime Minister vows to send British troops to Sweden or Finland if invaded by Russia.
Good morning, it's 8 o'clock on Thursday, May the 12th. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Isabel.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. Prime Minister Boris Johnson has signed a major military pact with the leaders of Sweden and Finland that would see British troops sent to the Nordic countries if they were invaded by Russia. He's the first Western leader to explicitly pledge military support.
Police in Bristol think a 15-year-old girl has been abducted. Maddie Thomas hasn't been seen since she left her home in Southmead on the 26th of April, saying she was going to the shops.
Platinum Jubilee celebrations kick off today at the Royal Windsor Horse Show, with most of the Queen's great-grandchildren, including Prince George and Princess Charlotte, reportedly riding in a horse-drawn carriage as part of the finale. We'll be down at the show a little bit later in the programme.
And we would love to hear from you this morning. Loads of you getting in touch on a whole host of things, including working from home and objecting to planning permission for your neighbours if that new rule comes into place where we can all take a vote on it. So let us know what you think. GBViews at gbnews.uk or tweet us at GBNews.
So our top story this hour, and Prime Minister Boris Johnson signed a major defence pact with Sweden and Finland that could see British troops deployed if the Nordic nations were invaded by Russian forces.
Now, the PM held press conferences with his Swedish and Finnish counterparts and reiterated the need to defend Europe for generations to come.
Many of us have been paying tribute to the brave men and women who secured victory and peace in Europe 77 years ago. And so it's a sad irony that we've been forced to discuss how best to fortify our shared defences against the empty conceit of a 21st century tyrant.
Well, he also said Britain would very seriously consider deploying nuclear weapons to protect the sovereignty of the two countries.
Well, his visit comes as the two nations consider membership of NATO, with the Finnish president expected to approve his country's membership potentially as early as today.
Well, let's talk to our political correspondent, Tom Harwood, who's here. Morning, Tom. I mean, how significant is this agreement with a country which clearly they think is under threat, or potentially under threat, but is not a member of NATO?
That is the crucial point. While Sweden and Finland have said that they want to join NATO, but are not yet in NATO, they're in an incredibly vulnerable position. That is the time that Vladimir Putin may want to strike, because they don't have that sense of collective defence that NATO provides under Article 6. So what the UK did yesterday was really step up to the plate and provide almost a unilateral NATO-like cover. As a rich nation, as a nation that's one of the highest spenders on defence in the world, as a nation that has a nuclear deterrent, the UK is almost offering this sort of bridge of a unilateral NATO-like assistance in the event that these countries may be incurred upon before they actually sign on the dotted line to accede to NATO. It also means that they're more likely to gain membership because, of course, every other NATO state needs to approve them becoming members. So this gets the ball rolling in a very firm way.
Yeah, and look, speaking of approving things, you know, a lot of people will applaud this announcement being made by the Prime Minister yesterday, but we do have to pay for that if it comes to that. We were talking to Con Coughlin, the defence editor of The Telegraph, in the last hour, who said, let's be realistic, we're providing lethal aid and support to Ukraine, we're providing a percentage of our GDP to NATO. Have we got the resources to deliver what we've promised?
Well, this is a big question. It came up at the Finnish press conference that the Prime Minister undertook in Helsinki yesterday. And it was mentioned that the United Kingdom was the biggest financer of Ukraine. Over £2 billion has now been given to that country. And the Prime Minister's answer was interesting. Because this was all asked in the context of the cost of living crisis. Shouldn't we be spending that money here at home? And the answer the Prime Minister gave was, if we weren't to spend this money now, if Ukraine were to potentially fall, if Russia were to be able to advance further, they wouldn't stop at Ukraine. They may go further and create this into a much wider European conflict. And actually, aside from all of the morality of that, which is clear, the economic implications of Russia pushing on further past Ukraine would be incredibly serious for us here in the United Kingdom too. So to some extent, the rational economic move is to provide this military support so that this war is contained and doesn't spread further and therefore impact our cost of living even more.
That's going to also require, in the immediate and longer term, actually, more money for our defences. A bigger armed forces budget, getting more soldiers and sailors and airmen recruited into this, and providing more equipment.
Quite possibly. Now, it is true that we have basically sent our entire supply of NLAW shoulder-mounted missiles. We've sent an enormous amount of equipment and are considering heavier equipment too. That on top of all of the financial aid, it does seem to be that there is a legitimate conversation to have about how our armed forces are funded. It's almost as if we're sort of basically fighting a war by proxy, but not quite. And in that case, obviously, budgets need to be considered. I know that the Defence Secretary is a big advocate of his department. However, of course, we are living in challenging times, and if you give more money somewhere, you might well have to take that from somewhere else.
Tom, speaking of legitimate conversations, the nuclear debate came up also during that press conference. The Prime Minister saying that, we don't normally comment on these things, but not ruling out a nuclear response if needed to protect Sweden and Norway, Finland, sorry, forgive me. How significant is that and how provocative potentially?
Well, it would be absolutely bizarre to spend the money that we have on nuclear warheads and keep our continuous at-sea deterrent as we do, and then promise that we weren't going to use it in any specific situation. The reason why we have nuclear weapons is precisely that the enemy does not know when we might use them. That is how mutually assured destruction works to prevent nuclear war. If the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom were ever to say, in this circumstance we wouldn't use our nuclear weapons, in this circumstance we wouldn't use our nuclear weapons, there would be very little point in having them, because that is just giving a clear target to any aggressor, saying we will not respond in a tough way if you go this far.
Yeah, I mean, it is called the nuclear deterrent, isn't it? I mean, that's the whole point of it.
Well, that's quite right, and that's why we have these weapons, not to use them, but not to use them. It's that constructive ambiguity and indeed that sense that we may be ready to use them if the situation were to require it.
Everyone says Putin has to be, he only understands strength and force. Is that what we're seeing now from the Prime Minister leading the way? This determination to say, we are going to stand up for you. We hold the right to use our nuclear weapons. We will stand with Finland and Sweden in all of this. Is this the sort of strength he will respond to?
It is remarkable that the Prime Minister seems to be showing up rather than the President of Russia, who has gone from being the kind of figure who rides topless on horseback through the Russian countryside to someone who sits at the end of very long tables, so he might not get too close to someone who hasn't quarantined. Seeing the Prime Minister Boris Johnson walk through the streets of Kiev with very little security around him in the middle of an active war zone, compared to how Putin sort of hides himself away in the Kremlin and in his various presidential palaces, it does rather show up Vladimir Putin, who had been constructing intricately this image of being such a strong and powerful person. Well, over the last few months, it seems that image has rather declined.
And just on the issue of Boris and his foreign policy and how successful that has been for him, there, like him or loathe him, people can definitely agree that he doesn't always have the same unanimous support on some of his domestic policies. He's been in for a bit of criticism for some of the things that were omitted from the Queen's speech. New lines on that today.
Certainly, it looks like there is a discussion, certainly, with regards to what fiscal intervention could be made. Is that more taxation? Is that taxation on energy companies? Is that more spending? Is that bringing forward tax cuts? There are many discussions happening, and the Cabinet is meeting in Staffordshire today to talk through a lot of these issues. Some of them fiscal, but others regulatory. And I think it's more likely that we will hear imminently more regulatory changes in terms of making the government more efficient, making the government cost less, and freeing up private enterprise to try and spur growth and avoid the likely recession that we may well dip into briefly next year.
OK. Thank you.
Oh, it's depressing, isn't it?
I know, don't mention the R
word. No. OK, now, police in Bristol think that a missing 15-year-old girl may have been abducted.
Yes, so we're talking about Maddie Thomas. She's not been seen now for some 15 days since she left her home in Southmead on the 26th of April, saying she was just going to the shops.
Well, let's get the very latest on the situation from our South West of England reporter, Jeff Moody, who's in Southmead in Bristol for us this morning. Jeff, what can you tell us?
Well, as you say, Maddie Thomas left her foster carer's home on the 26th of April, saying she was just going to the shops and hasn't been seen since. As you can imagine, her foster parents are extremely concerned. They say that she's a very vulnerable teenager. Police, Avon and Somerset Police, have been conducting all sorts of inquiries, door-to-door inquiries. They've also been examining CCTV footage to see if they can get some idea of her whereabouts or her state of mind at the time that she disappeared. disappeared. They've been looking in particular at her social media. She's been very, very active on social media in recent months and years. She has lots of different profiles on lots of different accounts and apps, and some of those profiles are with different names, some of them are with a different image. Sometimes she cuts her hair, she has her hair done differently, a different colour, and police are piecing together all of that social media to see if they can work out what might have happened to her. What they've discovered is that in recent weeks and months, Maddie has been talking to a lot of people online, men online, and arranging to meet them at shopping centres and at fast food outlets. Sometimes she asks them for money, sometimes she asks them for a place to stay. So the thought now is that on that day, she arranged to meet somebody at a shopping centre in Southmead in Bristol, and when she met that person, that man, something has happened to her. Sometimes she has gone missing before, she's always come back, but she's always, interestingly, been found with a man somewhere. Sometimes not in Bristol, sometimes further afield. So police are now saying they think that she may well have left Bristol and be anywhere in the country. But the question is, who is she with? The police have been saying that if anybody can see her, and don't forget, of course, her appearance has changed slightly. It does change from time to time. So, and she may not even be going by the same name. But if you do see anybody that you think might be Maddie, immediately call 999. And her foster carers, of course, are saying if Maddie is watching any of the media coverage of her disappearance, for her to immediately get in touch with them, just so that they know she is safe. She is a very vulnerable young adult, and people are very, very concerned indeed as to what might have happened to her.
OK, Jeff, thank you.
Now, with the time at 8:13, let's bring you up to date on all the latest news. The UK economy grew by 0.8% between January and March. That's according to the Office for National Statistics. It's actually down, though, from the growth of 1.3% in the previous 3 months.
The Foreign Secretary will hold crunch talks with the European Commission on Northern Ireland this morning as ministers decide whether to override parts of the post-Brexit deal. Liz Truss is expected to tell them the dispute over the protocol can't drag on. As the Prime Minister tells the EU there's no need for drama.
The Cabinet is meeting for a special away day in Stoke-on-Trent today to discuss how new legislation announced in the Queen's speech could help to boost the economy. During the trip, the Prime Minister will urge ministers to go faster in delivering ideas to alleviate the cost of living crisis. Now, a developing story this morning, the Office for National Statistics has, in the last hour, released the latest GDP figures showing the UK economy has grown 0.8% between January and March 2022.
Yes, the big question is, though, what does that actually mean? What does it mean for you? Thankfully, economics commentator Laurie Laird is here. Morning to you. Look,
putting a little pressure on me.
There's a lot of pressure on you, Laurie, because these figures are so... To most of us, these figures don't make any sense at all. So what does this mean in real terms?
OK, no, really, big pressure. Let's forget that 0.8%. It's a little bit less than people were expecting, but we're in a whole new world here. After Russia invaded Ukraine, prices are rising. Consumer sentiment is down. I mean, do you feel comfortable about spending money? When you read these headlines, you think, my gosh, what's coming down the road? So this is, to a certain extent, old news. But let's look at, for the first quarter, let's just look at the month of March, because the Office for National Statistics breaks down things monthly. One of the few statistical offices to do that. The economy actually contracted in the month of March, fell by 0.1%. And it does sound onerous. And what that means is that people essentially are getting poorer. It means that we are producing and buying less in the month of March. A couple of aberrations in March. One of the problems in March was the contraction of test and yeah, there we go.
Right.
Thank you. We're not vaccinating as heavily as we were. So the service sector, particularly health, contracted. Without that, the economy would have grown a little bit in March. What comes in April, though, because that's when we started to get scared. That's when we're reading these headlines. What comes in April is a really big question.
Right.
OK, so
did that help?
Well, it sort of helps, but it's just I'm still feeling quite concerned. You know what I mean?
Well, you're right to be.
Yeah, I mean, look, we were talking about growth of what 1.3% up until sort of Christmas time.
Which is
so we were bouncing
fairly-
back out of the pandemic
that's
pretty
right.
well, fastest growth
And that's
in the
fairly,
G7.
Yeah, but let's not get too, because Boris Johnson, Rishi Sunak said that. Different ways of measuring things. That was a little bit naughty, that one.
Okay, but that's not the case anymore now. We're at the bottom of the G7 in terms of growth. But, we are where we are. The question is, as you say, what happens after April? And forecasting notoriously difficult. But the problems that we're all facing don't look to be going anywhere anytime soon. So could we, and this is the million-dollar question, be going towards the dreaded recession?
Yes. We may not have a technical recession, and the definition is 2 consecutive quarters of contraction. But the Bank of England itself has said we're going to alternate between a little bit of contraction, a little bit of slow growth, and by the end of next year, we're not going to be any further ahead than where we were. Yet, the Bank of England is also saying inflation is so high, we're going to continue to raise interest rates. So we're in this low growth period, maybe even the dreaded R word, but because inflation is so high, interest rates are going to rise. So anyone who has debt, and that's most of us, or maybe I should just speak for myself here, anyone who has debt is going to have to pay more to service it.
Including the government.
Well, correct, absolutely.
But in terms of that, then, I know I've had people on the show say, "But why are interest rates going up? Why? Because that's taking more money out of our pocket." Explain to us why an increased interest rate is actually very important in reducing inflation.
I'm going to try that, but this is even more of a challenge. This is conventional thinking that typically when you have inflation, it's because an economy is sort of roaring away and people have a lot of money. There's a fixed amount of money chasing a fixed amount of goods that brings the price of goods up and services, things like haircuts and manicures, things like that. This isn't the case with this particular period of high inflation. This is pretty much from energy prices.
Right.
And it's a supply thing. There's not as much energy coming in, the price is going up. So raising interest rates doesn't do anything to combat that. And the Bank of England has said this. By raising interest rates, we are not going to reduce the price of food and energy. What they are saying is what we're trying to do is prevent people like us who are earning less because of inflation going to our employers and saying, look, inflation's cutting my pay. I'd like a pay rise, please. Would you ever mind? And that bids up inflation. So that gets you into a cycle of inflation. So the Bank of England is trying to prevent us from doing that.
Why does an increase in interest rates stop us from doing that?
It's trying to influence expectations. So if we think the Bank of England is going to raise interest rates, that means we think that the inflation will come down, so we don't have to ask for that interest rate hike or that pay hike. And in fact, Andrew Bailey, the governor of the Bank of England, not that long ago, did an interview. I think it was with one of your competitors, I'm terribly sorry, one of the financial news channels, and he was asked, should people not ask for pay rises? And this man, who's on more than $500,000 a year, said, well, that would be a good thing, as if not asking for pay rises would be something we do in the national interest.
Yeah, but look, just on that, one of the papers, I can't remember this morning, but we talked about it in one of the paper reviews, is that some employers are suggesting bonuses as a way of getting round the avoiding, trying to keep wages in line with inflation. Do you think that's a sensible option for
I think it's a very good point. I'm glad you made it. I think that will be the sort of things that companies do, where maybe we'll see signing on bonuses in industries where jobs are hard to
Any
fill.
downsides to that, though? I mean, I automatically think that bonus is bad for things like mortgages because it's harder to convince lenders that you've got a particular salary.
To a certain extent, it keeps those pay rises, it limits them rather than stretching them out over the period of a year. But the other thing that's coming up, there's a little bit of reporting this morning that Rishi Sunak and Boris Johnson have finally sat down and said, we have to do something. So Sunak is planning a package, but not until August. And again, this looks like it's going to be this fiddling around at the edges, maybe some more help with energy bills, but tricky things rather than giving money to people who actually need it.
Yeah, OK. Laurie, we're out of time. Yeah. I could talk to you all morning because it's so you make it understandable.
Well, you put me under pressure there. I was a little bit nervous.
Don't be nervous. It's only me. Don't be nervous about it.
We're not economists, you see. We need you to translate all of this for us.
We certainly
appreciate
do.
it. Always Thank you so much.
OK, coming up for you, we're going to be discussing planning permission, as new rules could mean that your neighbours dictate whether or not you can have an extension.
First of all, here's your forecast.
Hello, good morning. I'm Aidan McGivern. A fine start for many of us. Plenty of sunshine around first thing, but there will be further showers in the north, especially northern and western Scotland, where these showers or longer spells of rain will continue during the next couple of days. Low pressure close to Iceland will send a few weather fronts into the north of Scotland, but the front that caused yesterday's wet weather for England and Wales, well, that's well out of the way, and as a result, a fine day to come. Plenty of sunshine during the morning and early afternoon across England and Wales. Bright as well further north, but for Northern Ireland, for northern and western Scotland, there'll be further showers, or even for western Scotland, some more prolonged wet weather at times. A keen breeze here, making it feel cool, but temperatures still mostly around or a touch above average. We're looking at 17 to 20 in the south, 13 to 15 further north. A few showers into Wales and the southwest to end the afternoon and go into the evening, but clear spells for the southern half of the UK. I think Manchester northwards will see thicker cloud through the night and showers or longer spells of rain. That only lasts a few hours, and then by the early hours of Friday, mostly the wet weather is to the north of the central belt, and further south there will be cloudy conditions, but actually a lot of fine weather as we start off Friday. 10 to 12 degrees for many of us. Still a keen breeze, particularly for Scotland, where we'll also see further rain or showers in the north and west of the country. I think brighter skies for southern Scotland, Northern Ireland, northern England, but a lot of cloud around. Sunny skies, though, on Friday afternoon for a large part of the south of England, as well as much of Wales. 21 Celsius in London, feeling pleasant enough with the sunny spells. 14 there for Glasgow. And then into the weekend, high pressure builds quite widely, and that means Saturday looks like a fine day for most. Plenty of warm sunshine. Temperatures are rising as well. However, on Saturday night and into Sunday, that could cause some storms.
Hello, I'm Michelle Jubilee, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Jubilee, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Still to come on this morning's programme, we're talking about the Eurovision Song Contest. Are you a fan?
I always like a bit of Eurovision because it's so awful.
Yeah, I love it, but I also love it because Ukraine looks like they're probably going to win. Anyways,
oh, you see, that's what I don't like.
Oh, what, the politics of it?
The politics
No, I don't
of
like the politics of it, but anything to big up Ukraine, what's wrong with that? Anyway, it's happening this weekend. It's been 25 years since we won. But just after 9 o'clock, we're going to be meeting the songwriter who was responsible for Katrina and the Waves classic, Love, Shine a Light.
Oh, I thought you were going to burst into song there.
You do it.
Love, shine a light in every corner of my heart. Let the love like travel, or something like that.
Wow, you're good.
No, so we're going to meet the composer of that very tune. Fabulous. Also coming up at 8:45, we're live at the Royal Windsor Horse Show for all the pageantry from the start of the Jubilee celebrations.
Remember, get in touch on any of our discussions. As usual, email us gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet us at gbnews.
Now, a little bit later on here on GB News, you can watch Gloria Di Piero. She's got an exclusive interview with the Labour MP Stella Creasy.
Yeah, she's revealed that the sexual abuse that she experienced while studying at Cambridge University was not handled particularly well. Here's a preview of Gloria's interview with her.
I was in a room with them all and they threatened to gang rape me. It took public humiliation and posters and finally other people coming forward and me collating the evidence of all the notes, the spitting in my room, the rubbish that was thrown at me, the sexual abuse and harassment if I tried to walk into the bar that came from this group of young men.
Well, that will be on at around, someone give me a clue now what time we're expecting that.
Gloria on.
Just after
12:45.
There you go. And Gloria does these really amazing sit-down interviews and you know, often gets new details out of...
It's under the skin. It's getting really under the skin of these people.
You know, Stella Creasy, really very brave to be talking about all of that. So watch that, 12:45 today.
Now, here's one for you and your neighbours. You could soon be allowed to vote on your neighbour's planning permission for developments in your area.
Yes, the new Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill will give residents more involvement in local development and give communities a louder voice. At least that's the plan.
Yeah, let's talk to the author of The Truth About Property, Henry Davis, who joins us now. Good to see you this morning. Look, I can see why a politician on the surface may say, well, this looks like a good idea, this will involve communities. Is it really a sensible way of doing this?
Well, you know, I can see it's well-intentioned because we've all seen this house that's built like an eyesore in our local communities. So I can see where they're coming from, but the problem is that, you know, you're going to open the floodgate to NIMBYs. And as a property developer myself, I come up with people who object to just about anything. Even if I was to build the most amazing hospital and give everything away for free, I would have objectors. So ultimately, I do worry that it will reduce supply in the market, and effectively you'll have maybe rooms that could have been used, habitable rooms could have been used that are not getting used because of this.
Henry, it's interesting you talk about objecting. There is already this system in place whereby people can let the authorities know that they're not happy about building works going on. I know this because my neighbour wanted to do something. I objected and I was lucky enough that the authorities sided with me. So what's the difference between the current system of objecting and this new suggestion of voting?
Well, they haven't made it quite clear exactly how this will work in practice, but I believe locals will be allowed to come together and effectively vote on a development, which really is a bit of a game changer. And, you know, we have a fundamental supply problem, and the government, although well-intentioned they should have focused on policies that will increase supply. And how do you increase supply? You have to have a complete game changer, a complete mindset change, and you have to embrace high-rise, high-density development. You have to stop land banking by developers. You have to have minimum size occupancy. For example, last night there was a program on television, Grand Designs, and a gentleman was building a 3,000 square foot house, which he was going to live in on his own. The other thing you have to do is increase the tax on second homes. And these are the second homes that are not being rented out, that are being used in holiday destinations like Cornwall, etc.
It's all pretty hardcore. A lot of people wouldn't be very happy about that, but I suppose there's got to be some pretty tough thinking, hasn't there? But I tell you what worries me slightly about this, the potential of this new scheme, is that there's also the ability for communities to have, so they claim, a much bigger say in sort of developments in their area. Now, I always tend to think if you ask 100 people for their views, you're going to get 100 different answers.
Well, yeah, and you're going to get 100 no's, basically, because you're going to have a floodgate opening for every NIMBY, as I said in the beginning. And my God, NIMBYs are the bane of my life as a developer, and they're not exactly balanced and partial people. And that's fine if we have loads of supply and loads of options, but we have a desperate shortage of supply. And I'm just worried that any government policy which further reduces supply, what's going to happen in the end? House prices are going to go up even more. And if this policy is extended to maybe incorporate developments of large apartment blocks, for example, it's going to reduce supply. So the government, please, guys, if you are listening, every time you choose a policy, think about the impact on supply. That is the most important key consideration, and you will have to have a complete game changer in your thinking if you want to increase supply, and that is high density, high-rise apartment blocks, but high-quality buildings which are built like houses rather than flats, which are desirable to families. But it will be the only way to increase supply. The other option is to start extending the green belt, which I don't think people want to do.
No.
I mean, is it really that binary a decision, high rise, high density, or in the green belt? I'm not sure I'm convinced by that argument. I mean, we look at the capital here in London and we've got a surplus of flats that people can't sell. Now, there are problems, obviously, with overpriced, perhaps luxury, unaffordable housing. And I suppose all of this comes down to building affordable housing, and we know that the government have said that they're talking about trying to enable perhaps people with the housing association to buy their properties there. Might that be a better solution, using what we've got, reworking what we've got, rather than putting up more skyscrapers?
Well, you know, you think skyscraper is bad, but you could make skyscrapers that they're very attractive places with wide hallways, extra soundproofing, duplex apartments. And there's no problem with selling flats in London. Everything sells at a price. But there is a problem with affordable housing, as you have said. But how do you get affordable housing when land values in London are so high and when demand is so high? The answer is you've got to compulsory purchase land and build high-rise, because there's no space in London. And high-rise doesn't have to be poor quality, as I keep saying.
No, interesting. Really interesting to get your thoughts. Henry Davis, thank you very much indeed. I think when we think of high-rises, and we tend to think of the sort of awful high-rises, rather than if you look at somewhere like Canary Wharf, where the high-rises are, very nice buildings. I mean, it's how you look at it. I mean, I don't cherish the idea of a high-rise.
It's a hugely emotive subject, isn't it? And I'd be interested to know what people at home think. It is a crisis. It's something we need to talk about, and we need to be coming up with solutions. Of course, Prince Charles has famously wanted to have beautiful developments, things like Poundbury, but how affordable and realistic are those sorts of places? Let us know your thoughts this morning. And would you be in favour of this change to enable you to vote against pretty much every development in your area? And would that be a negative thing? Would everybody be saying no? Are we all NIMBYs?
We would all say no. Of course we would. Of course we would. Paula says she loves watching our programme from a sunny, I don't know if I'm getting this right, Paula, Hengoed in Wales. She converted all my family and friends to GB News.
Oh,
that's lovely.
That's what we like to hear. Diane's watching from Kenilworth in Warwickshire. She says that she's kicking off her Jubilee celebrations with the launch of their town's Jubilee celebration street party, and they are painting, including some of her paintings as well.
Yes,
that's fantastic.
I think she's
an artiste.
She's an artiste in Kenilworth. Kenilworth's very nice. Oh, lovely. Have a lovely time. We'd love to know what your plans are for the Jubilee, actually, if you're doing street parties and all that
Are you doing a
sort of
street party?
Well, yeah, me and Anne are going to be presenting from a street party that weekend. Quite exactly which one we're going to, I don't know. Maybe you can drop us an email.
Oh, yeah. Any suggestions of where you'd like Stephen and Anne to go? That's on the Sunday, isn't it?
I don't know if it's the Sunday or the Saturday.
I think the Saturday's the Epsom Derby, isn't it? The Kazoo Derby. And then the Sunday's supposed to be the nation's street parties.
So if you fancy being at a street party...
Come to my street. Come say hi.
6 o'clock in the morning,
will
you be out? We're going to have to get you out. We're going to have to get you out of bed, sit down and come and have a cup of tea with us.
We are usually up at that time, small children. Look, stay with us. Lots more still to come for you. We are taking one last look at the papers this morning with Dawn Neeson and David Wooding. That's in just a couple of minutes.
Hello, I'm Michelle Jubilee, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Jubilee, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. It's 8:38. Let's bring you up to date with the latest headlines.
Yeah, starting with a little bit of breaking news, and Finland's President and Prime Minister have announced publicly for the first time their intention to join the NATO military alliance. They've made a joint statement in which they said Finland must apply for membership without delay, and Sweden, we know, is likely to follow suit.
Meanwhile, another breaking story this morning. The UK economy grew by 0.8% between January and March. That's according to the Office for National Statistics. It's down from growth of 1.3% in the previous 3 months.
A Conservative MP says he stands by his comments on food banks after saying people use them because they can't cook or budget. In a statement posted on social media this morning, Lee Anderson said he makes no apologies for trying to help people fend for themselves.
It's that time in the programme when we go through the newspaper. Some people say it's the best part of the programme, and today we're joined for one last romp through. Well, I have to say I really enjoyed this segment, and we're joined by David Wooding at Dawn Neeson. And David, you want to start with the front of the Sun newspaper. Levi Belfield, who lots of people will remember, of course, is a horrible serial killer. What's he been up to?
Well, yes, he's been having a prison visitor, a 40-year-old blonde woman who's been going around visiting him, and they exchanged rings, and they're now seeking permission to get married. And rightly so. There's a huge uproar in Parliament. The former Justice Secretary, Robert Buckland, saying, beggars belief that this man who's murdered so many young people, I mean, Millie Dowler among them, who will not see their own wedding. It would be, and there's a move now to have this stopped. And
can I ask? I feel this isn't going to help if you're on the radio this morning. There's a picture on the inside of the Sun. The face is all blurted out. Is that the lady? Is that the actual?
I think that is the woman, and we know her identity.
So she's posing. I'm not going to hold it up for you because she's posing in a sort of.
She's rather busty
outfit, and all that. It begs the question: what sort of lady is she? Is she after publicity for this? Is that it?
Well, I don't know the background to this story, I have to be honest, but it looks to me like the woman has been. They found out about the story and the woman has been approached, and this looks to me as though it might be some kind of internet exchange photographs.
It's a thing, isn't it, that serial killers or indeed criminals in prison can sometimes attract very strange people. You see it in on the crime channels all the time. That
they write letters to them and become real close buddies.
It is actually a recognised psychological thing. Women are attracted to serial killers. I mean, it's quite
some women.
It's some women, but this came about, this story, a little bit of the background, because she put out on social media, as you do these days, about how she was about to become the new Mrs. Levi Belfield, and someone picked up on it. But I mean, it's quite an incredible story.
I'm all for having decent rights for people who are in jail. I think it's absolutely right that they are looked after and where possible rehabilitated. However, if you're a serial sex offender and murderer like this, on a whole life tariff, surely there is no way on God's earth the authorities would allow them to get married.
They absolutely shouldn't. You say, Millie Dowler, she's been deprived of that right. She's been deprived of that life. She's never going to get married. She's never going to have children. So, I mean, her life has been taken away. So what right does he have to do this? None.
Yeah, and talking of rights, it's a thing, isn't it, as well amongst prisoners, that sometimes there are exceptions made for conjugal rights to be enabled. Human rights all come into all of this.
Does that happen in the UK?
Don't know.
That's an American thing.
Is that an American thing? OK, for you, because there's absolutely no way that he should be allowed to be having any conjugal rights.
And, one wonders what his motives are and, indeed, what the woman's motives are behind this.
Awful.
Extraordinary.
Hers are publicity, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to say that.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. Dawn, legalising cannabis in the Times. Sadiq Khan is in the States.
All dressed up.
Yes.
Nowhere to go.
Ironically wearing a Giants baseball top. And if you know how tall Sadiq Khan is, it's a delicious irony. Yes. In any case, the Mayor of London, I'm not quite sure what he's doing out in LA.
He's trying to drum up tourism because we're down on American visitors, I believe.
Right,
That's what, and business just generally.
Do we have to make weed legal then to get the Americans?
Well, this is the thing. In any case, I mean, Sadiq Khan has set up a commission that will look into whether we should make cannabis legal, decriminalise cannabis, and he's doing this on a trip to a marijuana farm. And he's pointed out that statistics show that 4,561 people died of drug-related poisoning in Wales.
Inhale, David.
The highest since records become, and in America, where 11 states have decriminalised or made cannabis legal, it has the crime figures and the deaths from drugs have gone down. So he has got a point. However, the whole drug debate, I mean, I don't know what the answer is. I'm not sure anyone does. But, I mean, someone in my family got involved in cannabis, a very strong cannabis, and now has severe psychosis issues. So from a personal point of view, I have huge issues with the story. However, I do recognise that, alcohol is completely, legal, and certain people cannot control alcohol either. So I see both sides of this story, and it's interesting that this has opened the debate, and we are, Sadiq Khan now wants to look into it, and there are some areas in this country as well where the police really don't take any action if you are caught carrying a small personal amount of cannabis.
I have to say, when you walk around, certainly if you walk around London, I'm sure it applies to other towns and cities as well. You just smell it everywhere.
Yeah, well,
I mean, and no one bats an eyelid now. I think it's awful.
The prevalence is more, and you wonder what it would be like if it was decriminalised. I mean, there are some people who say tobacco would be illegal if we knew the damage that it caused. So why decriminalise?
You've got to love America, haven't you? You can ban abortion, but allow legalised drugs. Don't get started on one of those countries.
Yep.
OK, look, should we talk about, David, the lottery winner yesterday, scooping 184 million? This is the biggest lottery win yet, but nobody's come forward.
Yeah, well, there allegedly is somebody who's being checked out at the moment.
Okay.
So it's the odds of this win is 140 million to 1. And in the Sun here, they're talking about the 184 million pound prize. It would make the winner almost as rich as people like Ed Sheeran who's worth £220 million, and more than Adele, who's worth £130 million. Wow. And it would put the winner into the top 1,000 richest people in the country. Harry Kane, for instance, the Tottenham Hotspur and England player, is worth £33 million. And for that money, you could buy one of these super yachts, the 350-foot.
Well, there's a few of those
Benetti
floating around after
yeah.
the sanctions.
Well, they're worth 150 million quid. So
One careful Russian.
The Daily Mail, incidentally, in their coverage of it, say that there's enough to buy 17.5 million takeaway curries like the one Keir Starmer had at Durham, which is a bit cheeky.
Wow, I mean, it's a huge amount of money.
It is.
I hope whoever it is, in all seriousness, though I'm bitter, I hope whoever it is gets a lot of advice and does not make themselves known.
And will be happy as well, because a lot of these people end up with miserable lives.
Yeah, look, call me old-fashioned. I think to suddenly, overnight, become incredibly wealthy without working hard... Not that they haven't worked hard, but... No, that's the wrong phrase. I can hear you taking...
No, it's just because I'd like to give it a try.
Working towards that and earning it. I think that, well, statistics show marriages break down, friendship groups end. I wouldn't want it. Hands up, wouldn't want it.
Maybe they should give it all up.
If you win...
I don't play. I don't play. But I'm not saying... Look.
I do play, Dawn.
So do I.
But it wasn't me.
So no, me neither. Well, neither of us would be here, would we?
I know. It's a lovely thought.
What's the thing you'd blow it on, though, first? What would you go and do first?
To be honest, I don't know.
Where to start?
But I'm a saver, right? And but all in the family. Good northern family. Used to sit down with my grandma's bank books, and we used to go through all, and she'd tell me what she'd saved. You know, a few hundred quid here, a few hundred quid there. So that's in my blood. So the first thing I do is get it into a savings account, just so I could look it up on the phone and say, that's how much money I've got in the savings account. That would give me more pleasure than buying anything.
You just sit and look at a bank statement.
I could count money.
That says everything you need to know about Stephen, doesn't it, really?
Well, go on, Dawn, what would you spend it on?
I'd travel around the world. I know it's a cliche, but I would. Yeah. I mean, not necessarily 5-star in a one carefully Russian-owned yacht. I would actually pack a rucksack and just travel around the world.
Nice. Well, you don't need to win the lottery to do that.
Well, it's still quite expensive, though, isn't it? So, yeah, I'd do that, yeah.
No, I don't fancy
Go on, David.
Well, I'd look after the family. I'd make sure the kids were looked after.
Yeah. I'm with you.
I would. I already give them loads of money anyway, so I might give them a bit more. And I think I would know what to do with it. I like some of the fine things in life. I like a nice bottle of good, expensive wine, so I'd spend it on that. I'd go to the opera more often, and I'd spend it on the fine things in life. That's what I would do.
Good for you.
But not
Very
too much.
Nice. Very
No,
nice.
I wouldn't want to change too much as a person.
You would.
Once I'd had the gold bath installed.
Exactly.
Upgrading from the platinum one, you've got to...
Yeah. Have we got time for one more?
Yes, go on.
OK, Dawn, let's finish on this global supply crisis, and this should really be top story, because this is a big worry.
I'm sorry, this is the latest victim of inflation. I'm just going to read this straight. A big group in the global supply chain has claimed yet another victim. Comedy plastic willies. Hindu suppliers... Stop sniggering at the back. Hindu suppliers are struggling to meet the stiff demand for inflatable manhoods and willy-shaped straws as the climax of the pre-wedding season draws near. About 250,000 of the silly straws are normally sold every year, but there is a major shortage. In any case, one company which would usually sell 7,000 blunt willies is down to its last one. Basically, the problem is with China, and isn't it always, their zero-COVID approach to tackling the pandemic and lockdowns. Factories are not producing as many willies as they were, and obviously they're a huge thing for hen parties, and it's a...
We've been taken off there yet, Stephen?
It's moments away. It's moments away.
Have either of you ever encountered... Oh, I don't know if I need to ask this question. Dawn and I are familiar with hen do's and plastic willies. That's all I'm saying.
Do you speak for yourself, young lady?
Have you never...
I've never been near a plastic willy in my life.
Have you never?
No.
Oh, gosh.
No, we went out for a sophisticated dinner for our pre-wedding treat.
Oh, no, OK.
It's very cheap and trashy.
Stephen,
Isabel.
your pre-wedding treat is going to be a sophisticated dinner because you're...
No, we're not doing any. We're not doing a pre-wedding thing. No.
No.
I have to say, my hen do, best night of my life. It was so good.
So you were
That really isn't what you should say. The best night of your life was before you got married.
Your wedding night. Your wedding night is the best night of your life.
It's too much pressure.
I think we should put a
overwhelming.
team on to try and get pictures of Isabel's.
Oh, no.
And we can
There were some people... Anyway, moving on. Right, yeah, Hendu, less said the better. Plastic Willies, end of conversation. Look, David, Dawn, always a pleasure. See you again next Thursday. Thank you very much.
I'm glad I'm not in next Thursday. Lummin', eh?
Should we raise the tone a little bit?
Well, let's raise the tone a little and get all very sophisticated, because 4 days of celebrations begin today at the Royal Windsor Horse Show, kicking off festivities for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee.
And it's been reported today that 10 of the Queen's 12 great-grandchildren will attend in a horse-drawn carriage as part of the finale. Well, Rosie Wright is lucky enough to be there this morning for us, Rosie. The sun is shining and the scene is set for a fabulous 4 days.
It is a bit of a gear change of where I am now, a real contrast to the horses we saw an hour ago. Welcome to Base Camp, Scotland's team in the Pony Mounted Games that we're going to be finding out a little bit more about. This is sort of the army of supporters, parents helping these teenagers to get ready to compete. So here we go over here. We've got Team Scotland. Hello, Team Scotland. Good morning. They've been very polite and have really not minded me just completely getting in the way. And we can meet two competitors now from Team Scotland and also from Team England. Bit of friendly rivalry. Team Wales are currently the reigning victors. They're not here, so we're going to try and take them on. This is Heidi. Very good morning to you and to Ollie as well. Ollie, I'll start with you. Just explain the Pony Mounted Games. The way I've been told about it, it's a bit like kind of doing the sports day relay, like egg and spoon race, but on a pony.
Yeah, that's pretty much right. There's 5 people in each team and 4 people in each race.
And give me an idea of a race.
The most simple one is bending, which is like 5 poles lined up and you just weave in and out of them and then come back.
So that doesn't sound very simple at all. Kind of what training do you do to be able to practice to do that? And introduce us to your pony as well.
This is Gunnar and he's 21 now. And we train twice a week for 2 hours each time. So quite a bit of training, but not too much.
Now, I've watched some videos of it. It looks very acrobatic. It involves you kind of hopping off, hopping back on again.
Yeah, it's quite straining, especially on your legs. It's quite sore after a session.
Well, good luck for later. You'll be going head-to-head against Heidi. Do you two know each other? Have you met before?
No, I've never met him before.
OK, right. Well, we'll have to see how that goes. Heidi, tell me a little bit then. How did you decide to get into this? Because you didn't initially start with ponies, did you?
No, so I've been riding since I was 6, but I started with showing, but I got a bit bored with that, so I decided to start Pony Club, and then that's where I really found my love for mounted games.
OK, and explain to us, what's your favourite race and why?
My favourite race is probably the bottle race, because you go up, you put a bottle in a bin, and then you go up, turn around the bin, pick up a bottle, and then hand it over to the other person.
You're doing that whilst riding your pony? Right, so it's quite complicated. And in your team, there's a reserve member. I didn't think it potentially could have caused that many injuries, but you've had one before.
Yeah, so I have broken my arm before riding. That was from missing a vault, and I just fell over and broke my arm. Then I got back up and finished the race.
So it hasn't put you off?
No.
Today should be really exciting. There are a little bit of hopes, excitement that the Queen could be here today. That would be really exciting.
Yeah, that's really exciting. I'm really looking forward to seeing her.
Let's hope that she arrives. Of course, we're in the grounds. It's the only time in the year when the private grounds then become open to the public. So there's the pony racing later and a whole host of other events and activities. The Queen actually has 41 of her own horses and ponies competing in the next 4 days. It's all part of this rich, exciting set of celebrations to, of course, celebrate her Jubilee. I'll be here today to bring you some of the highlights.
Well, keep your eyes peeled just in case you do catch a glimpse of her. And do let us know, Rosie, if you do. But otherwise, just enjoy that sunshine. Have a lovely day.
Having a very nice time.
Yeah,
quite right.
I dig that.
It will be very nice. It will be very nice, I have to say. Now, there's a lot of you getting in touch on cost of living. John, I wish I could give you an answer to this, John, because we did talk to someone about it the other day, and I can't remember what they said. But about standing charges. Well, even if you don't use your gas or electricity, you still have to pay them. Yes, you do. Well, I can understand that. The fact that the standing charge has gone up significantly as well. There is a reason for that. I just can't remember what it is. So there you go.
We've also been talking about work from home this morning. Claire says nobody should be made to work from home, but for those who enjoy it, it means a much better quality of life. It reduces traffic, boosts local businesses that people can then visit in their lunch break. Meanwhile, Steve says, sorry, working from home, no way. As a nation, we'll achieve the productivity this nation requires to pay for all the needs from the public purse, plus all the other negatives for transports and coffee houses, etc. Let us know your thoughts.
But do stay with us. We've got lots coming up in the next 30 minutes. We're going to be talking to the writer of the UK's last Eurovision-winning song, Katrina and the Waves.
Yeah, that was 25 years ago, quarter of a century.
It's a classic, though.
Here's your Thursday forecast.
Hello, good morning. I'm Eamonn McGivern. A fine start for many of us. Plenty of sunshine around first thing, but there will be further showers in the north, especially northern and western Scotland, where these showers or longer spells of rain will continue during the next couple of days. Low pressure close to Iceland will send a few weather fronts into the north of Scotland, but the front that caused yesterday's wet weather for England and Wales, well, that's well out of the way, and as a result, a fine day to come. Plenty of sunshine during the morning and early afternoon across England and Wales. Bright as well further north, but for Northern Ireland, for northern and western Scotland, there'll be further showers, or even for western Scotland, some more prolonged wet weather at times. A keen breeze here, making it feel cool, but temperatures still mostly around or a touch above average. We're looking at 17 to 20 in the south, 13 to 15 further north. A few showers into Wales and the southwest to end the afternoon and go into the evening, but clear spells for the southern half of the UK. I think Manchester northwards will see thicker cloud through the night and showers or longer spells of rain. That only lasts a few hours, and then by the early hours of Friday, mostly the wet weather is to the north of the central belt, and further south there will be cloudy conditions, but actually a lot of fine weather as we start off Friday. 10 to 12 degrees for many of us. Still a keen breeze, particularly for Scotland, where we'll also see further rain or showers in the north and west of the country. I think brighter skies for southern Scotland, Northern Ireland, northern England, but a lot of cloud around. Sunny skies, though, on Friday afternoon for a large part of the south of England, as well as much of Wales. 21 Celsius in London, feeling pleasant enough with the sunny spells. 14 there for Glasgow. And then into the weekend, high pressure builds quite widely, and that means Saturday looks like a fine day for most. Plenty of warm sunshine. Temperatures are rising as well. However, on Saturday night and into Sunday, that could cause some storms.
Hello, I'm Michelle Jubilee, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Jubilee, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
The Prime Minister vows to send British troops to Sweden or Finland if invaded by Russia.
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock on Thursday the 12th of May. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Isabel.
Well, get my words out today. This is what we've got for you this morning, and the Prime Minister has signed a major military pact with the leaders of Sweden and Finland that would see British troops sent to the Nordic countries if they were invaded by Russia. He's the first Western leader to explicitly pledge military support.
Police in Bristol believe that a missing 15-year-old girl has been abducted. Maddie Thomas has not been seen since she left her home in Southmead on the 26th of April, saying she was going to the shops.
Platinum Jubilee celebrations kick off today at the Royal Windsor Horse Show, with most of the Queen's great-grandchildren, including George and Charlotte, reportedly riding in a horse-drawn carriage as part of the finale. Will be down at the show later on.
And as always, you can get in touch, involved in any of our discussions. Email us gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us @gbnews.
Interesting one message from Adrienne this morning. Morning to you. She's in Reading. She says she's trying to start up a chatty cafe scheme for lonely people. Hasn't got it off the ground yet, but is trying. Reading really needs levelling up, she says. Chatty cafes. See, that's a really good idea, isn't it? Just get people. The nice thing is, as well, if you can do something that attracts older people and younger people, it's that dynamic.
Yeah. Because
really
cafes,
works.
actually, if you think about it, quite often in cafes, people don't talk to each other.
Yeah, I suppose
Sit, have a
not.
coffee. They talk to whoever they're meeting, but you wouldn't talk to anybody else. But if it's a principle of going there, it's designed for that, it would be nice. I love chatting to random people.
Yeah, well, that's a great idea, that, Adrienne. Hope it works out. Let us know how you get on. Now, to our top story. The PM has signed a major defence pact with Sweden and Finland that could see British troops deployed if the Nordic nations were invaded by Russian forces.
Yeah, the Prime Minister held press conferences yesterday with his Swedish and Finnish counterparts and reiterated the need to defend Europe for generations to come.
Many of us have been paying tribute to the brave men and women who secured victory and peace in Europe 77 years ago. And so it's a sad irony that we've been forced to discuss how best to fortify our shared defences against the empty conceit of a 21st century tyrant.
Well, he also said Britain would very seriously consider deploying nuclear weapons to protect the sovereignty of the two countries.
Well, his visit comes as the two countries consider their membership of NATO, with the Finnish president this morning saying that the country does indeed need to join the organisation. Well, let's get the very latest on all of this and discuss all of the big stories of the day, his views as well, from the former Home Office Minister and Thursday regular, and I should say turned royal author, Norman Baker. Welcome back to the programme. Lovely to see you. What do you think about, then, what the Prime Minister announced yesterday on this trip to Scandinavia?
Well, I mean, Sweden and Finland are democratic countries, and I think it's right that we support them, but it's a bit of a risk, quite frankly. I mean, this isn't a NATO initiative. It's not an initiative which the US wanted to take, so we've gone out on a limb here. I suppose the intention is to try and dissuade Putin from taking action, because he's threatened to do so against Sweden and Finland. But if he did take action, then suddenly we find ourselves involved in a war outside our own boundaries, somewhere quite some distance away. We have to get troops over there and so on. It's a risky strategy, although a brave one.
It's seen as a sort of a bridging loan, if
yes,
you like.
exactly. Yeah, it is. But the bridging loan is only being guaranteed by this country, not by NATO.
You would have to assume, though, wouldn't you, that if something happened, actually everybody else would jump in?
I wouldn't assume that, actually.
Wouldn't
I mean, NATO has said we're defending NATO countries, not other countries. This is the reason we're not in Ukraine directly. It's the reason why Moldova and Georgia feel threatened and vulnerable. And it's the reason why Sweden and Finland have wanted to join NATO to get that protection. Well, they've got, as you say, a bridging loan is a good way of putting it, actually, but the bridging loan is only guaranteed by us. And Putin is somewhat out of control at the moment. If he did decide to deal with Sweden and Finland in his terms before they join NATO, then, you know, we are there committed to supporting them, and nobody else is.
Yeah, yet. I mean, it's only just been announced, and one would presume that if it got to the stage where Russia invaded either of those countries, we wouldn't be the only ones leaping to their defence. France, Italy, perhaps, would be the next obvious people to step forward. Who knows? But I think it would be unlikely, would it, just that she'd be left. And just going back to the bridging loan theory, I mean, we're getting these warm words from the Finnish president this morning saying that it does need to happen. We do need to join NATO without delay. So this would be a stopgap, because that would still be quite a lengthy process. Could be a year, some people saying. So this offer presumably would just be for that interim period.
Well, it would be, but I mean, if Putin was going to act, he would act in the interim period, not after we join NATO, or they join NATO. I mean, I think the answer really is for NATO to fast-track the applications. I don't know why it should take a year for them to join. I mean, they're clearly democratic countries. They clearly are meet the criteria. They're in the European Union and so on. So really, why can't they be given provisional membership of NATO now? That's the answer.
Yeah, well, you know, that wouldn't surprise you if it happened, to be perfectly honest, especially when you look at the size of their armed forces.
Yeah.
Now, can we talk cost of living? And what do you make of... We've been talking about Lee Anderson, this former Labour councillor who became a Tory MP and has now said people need to, you know, start... Well, the way it's been put in the headlines is poor people can't cook, and that's the problem they've got. Now, has it been taken out of context there, do you think? He's sort of saying we need to sort of get people to cook more and be better with their finances.
Well, he's quoted directly in the papers this morning in the Mirror as saying we have got generation after generation who cannot cook properly, can't budget. That seems to be a very direct quote from him.
Well, let's listen to him actually speaking the words. He was on GB News yesterday. Let's listen in to what he had to say.
My invitation is to everybody on that side of the house. Come to Ashfield and work with me for a day in my food bank and see that the brilliant scheme we've got in place, where when people come now for a food parcel, they have to register for a budgeting course and a cooking course. And what we do at the food bank, we show them how to cook cheap and nutritious meals on a budget. We can make a meal for about 30 pence a day.
OK, so that was obviously him.
Well, I mean, if it's voluntary and if people want to participate in that, then it's a good initiative. So has he been quoted out of context? I mean, there's a direct quote here in the Mirror. He told MPs, we have got generation after generation who can't cook properly, can't budget. So, I mean, I suppose the answer is you can take a quote out of context with a paper, or a quote out of context from a speech. But, I mean, it's probably... You know, he's treading on dangerous ground in a way by leaving himself wide open to this and nothing else.
Yeah, but isn't that quite interesting? I mean, I know very little about him. I've got to be honest. But I quite like the fact that someone is actually... It almost sounds a bit common sense to say people need to... if you can cook from scratch, you can do it cheaper. Well, that's a fact.
Yes, it's true. It's true.
And people can't cook like they used to. I don't think it's about the poor not being able to cook. No one can cook these days, or very, very often a lot of people don't know how to cook.
Well, it's true. It's true that, you know, I heard someone the other day saying they could only afford a bag of crisps and that's all they'll have to eat. And actually, you can get a couple of tins of baked beans, which are much better for you than a bag of crisps. So there's an element of truth in that. I suppose the fact that it's concentrating on the poor, or it has been presented as that, is the issue. Because, quite frankly, I know people who are quite well off who can't boil an egg.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I just wonder with all of this whether or not people have reached the stage where they aren't prepared. And this is, you know, this is an argument, it's not my views, but where we've got to a stage where people aren't prepared to be able to take the steps necessary to save money. People didn't want to be told by the energy companies that they should wear 2 jumpers, but it's probably quite a sensible solution. People don't want to be told that they can, you know, cook a stew and live off it for a week. Are we almost a bit too spoiled, a bit too proud to be given these sorts of tips now?
Well, I think there's a certain complacency with a standard of living and a standard of operating your own life, which does have to adjust sometimes to circumstances which you find yourself in. You know, that sort of argument of not wearing 2 jumpers wouldn't have applied in the war, for example, when we were all stretched and having to make sacrifices in order to survive from one day to the next. We've not had that recently. We've had an assumption that you can do what you want, really, and it will somehow be provided for. So I think there is an element of truth in the fact that we can look at how we're living. I mean, personally, I'd put another jumper on rather than put the heating on, not just for financial reasons, because actually it's more practical to do that.
I just think it's the fact when we get told by people who make a load of money and other people charging us more money for our power.
Yes, I think there's a distaste from people who are well off, telling people who are poor how to live their lives. And that's really the nub of it, I think.
Yeah.
From something equally, from one controversial subject to another, should we talk about e-scooters?
Oh, you like an e-scooter,
I do.
Don't you?
E-scooters. Well, I deal with these, actually, because I'm part of my other job is with the campaign for better transport. So I've been looking at this issue.
You used to be a transport minister as well.
Indeed, I was transport minister for three and a bit years. And we were looking at that back in the day. The problem has been that we've allowed e-scooters to come into the market. They're illegal except in trials, but people have been using them as if they're not illegal, and there's no regulation with that. They've been rallying on pavements, they've been knocking people over. There's no lights on these machines, there's no signals. And quite frankly...
I mean, look at that fella there. He should know better at his age. These trendy... I tell you what, it strikes me as trendy, woke numpties.
Oh,
well, I don't think like that. I mean,
started.
look, they can relieve congestion. You can get from A to B quickly.
Oh,
they are a form of transport which is a new form, but that is attractive to people.
That's Milton Keynes.
Can I just say, I can tell neither of you have ever taken an e-scooter because you can't get from A to B quickly. Do you know why?
Why?
Because each local authority has their own area which these trials are running in. So if you're going out of one local authority to another, so perhaps you were travelling, say, from Hammersmith into Chelsea and Kensington, you can't then drop off your scooter when you get there.
No, but...
And they just automatically switch off. The electricity switches off.
But the problem has been that most scooters out there are illegal and not part of the trials. That's the whole issue. And we need to get regulation. The government's promised it now. We need to get regulation in place. E-scooters have a place, but only when they're properly regulated, and they're not at the moment.
No, I say get rid of them.
That's a bit drastic, isn't it?
No,
you'd have everyone in cars and Chelsea tractors for all eternity.
Yeah, everyone a diesel.
What about room for everything?
No, that's not true. But, I just think they are just everywhere at the minute. They're a blight on our streets. But that's just me being controversial.
Well, I can see you're not in favour of them, certainly.
No, I'm not. Not really good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. You never know, I might come in next week on an e-scooter.
Well, you should try it. What was that other thing people used to have? I forgot what it was called now. With two wheels on it.
Oh, Sinclair C5?
No,
a hoverboard thing?
A bicycle?
No, the Sinclair C5, of course, was a terrible failure. I mean, you ended up with sitting in the shoebox, with exhaust fumes from the car in front pouring into you.
You mean a Segway?
Segway, that's the one. And the guy, am I right in thinking the guy who invented it went over a cliff on it?
No, really?
Yes, I think he did, not that long ago.
Which kind of ended the process.
Well,
yeah, but they're great Segways.
I tried one of those. I thought they were rather unstable.
Oh, no, I did a Segway. I mean, my mum did Segway.
Would you like a Segway up and down the pavement?
That'll do.
So you like a Segway but not an e-scooter, just to be clear?
Yeah.
Oh, you're totally... I can't understand you. Never going to understand you.
No.
Look, we've got to stop that. I could talk to you all day, Norman. We've got to move on to talk about Eurovision. It is, of course, Eurovision Day on Saturday. And do you know how long it's been since we've had any success there?
Yes, I do, because I'm a Eurovision geek.
Yeah? How long?
It's been 25 years.
Wow.
25 long years. Very long years. We last won with a fabulous tune by Katrina and the Waves, Love, Shine a Light. Let's have a listen.
Love, shine a light in every corner of my heart. Let the love light carry, let the love light carry. Light up the magic in every little part.
Oh, lovely. I remember watching that live. Sounds as good today as it did back then, I can tell you. It was written by Kimberly Rue.
Oh, does she have the magic formula?
He does. He joins us now. Really good to see you, Kimberly.
Good morning, everybody.
Look, I mean, 25 years on, it's an absolute tragedy that we haven't won anything since. But I tell you what a cracking tune that was.
Thank you.
I mean, it just doesn't age, does it?
I hope not. No. I mean, we had another tune with Katrina and the Waves called Walking on Sunshine. from 1985, and that is not at all a typical song of the 1980s. I think we managed to squeeze something of the sort of timeless spirit of rock and roll into that one, and hopefully Love Shine a Light too.
Kimberly, do people ring you up with desperation and say, please help us try and win? Because we just have such bad luck for the last quarter of a century. And surely you've got the magic formula.
Well, yeah, people think I have. Actually, I've been doing the same thing all my life. You know, I desperately wanted to be a guitarist and a songwriter, and that's what I've been doing. That's been my job ever since I was a little child. And looking at me, you can tell how long ago that was. But and then just very occasionally, the public will kind of something I've written will kind of connect with the wider public. But I don't change. It's just like the public kind of once in a while kind of slides into my orbit and then back out again.
Was it a shock when you won Eurovision? Because we all know how political it is, and sometimes it's not the good tunes that win, it's the weird and wacky that sometimes wow the audience.
Yeah, that might win. Yes, I mean it has been known. What was it, Lordi? Was that the? Oh no, that's the band, wasn't it? Yes, from Finland. Yeah. Who'd have thought it? Like Finnish heavy metal kind of thing. Storming Eurovision, but there you go. It could happen.
Do you think that Eurovision really is about music, or do you think it's more? I mean, I don't know if you've seen the Hollywood film about it. It's kind of sort of a camp, a celebration of sort of Euro trash. I don't know how to describe it, but it's celebrated in love, but also really anti-British.
Exactly. Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head there. I mean, there is this kind of. We love it, we take it very seriously, but we're also a tiny bit ironic. We can see ourselves looking at it and kind of loving it, but are we really sincere about it? I mean, we love pop music, don't we? And pop music can always slide on one extreme into like just unforgiving cheese, can it? And general sort of razzmatazz. I mean, without any musical content. But this year we have Sam Ryder with Spaceman, and he has loads of musical content. He's a genuine grassroots artist, and there's loads of genuine feeling in his song, and I think he will get points for that.
Well, let's hope so. Let's hope so. I've got to say, Kimberly, it's a joy to talk to you, because that is one of my classic all-time songs. I remember it so well. As I say, I don't think it's aged today. Real joy to talk to you. Thank you.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. I was a bit confused for a few minutes there. I thought maybe he was speaking to us from the south of Spain with his Panama hat. There was a picture of the beach on the wall in his Hawaiian shirt, and it said Cambridge on the screen, and I was thinking, is there a Cambridge? And anyway, no, it's not. It was
lovely. If you're in Cambridge this morning, it looks like you're going to have a lovely day.
Look, stay with us. Lots more razzmatazz showbiz coming your way. Ellie Phillips will be here, and she's going to bring us all the latest drama from the Wagatha Christie court trial. That's in just a moment.
Hello, good morning. I'm Aidan McGivern. A fine start for many of us. Plenty of sunshine around first thing, but there will be further showers in the north, especially northern and western Scotland, where these showers or longer spells of rain will continue during the next couple of days. Low pressure close to Iceland will send a few weather fronts into the north of Scotland, but the front that caused yesterday's wet weather for England and Wales, well, that's well out of the way, and as a result, a fine day to come. Plenty of sunshine during the morning and early afternoon across England and Wales. Bright as well further north, but for Northern Ireland, for northern and western Scotland, there'll be further showers, or even for western Scotland, some more prolonged wet weather at times. A keen breeze here, making it feel cool, but temperatures still mostly around or a touch above average. We're looking at 17 to 20 in the south, 13 to 15 further north. A few showers into Wales and the southwest to end the afternoon and go into the evening, but clear spells for the southern half of the UK. I think Manchester northwards will see thicker cloud through the night and showers or longer spells of rain. That only lasts a few hours, and then by the early hours of Friday, mostly the wet weather is to the north of the central belt, and further south there will be cloudy conditions, but actually a lot of fine weather as we start off Friday. 10 to 12 degrees for many of us. Still a keen breeze, particularly for Scotland, where we'll also see further rain or showers in the north and west of the country. I think brighter skies for southern Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England, but a lot of cloud around. Sunny skies, though, on Friday afternoon for a large part of the south of England, as well as much of Wales. 21 Celsius in London, feeling pleasant enough with the sunny spells. 14 there for Glasgow. And then into the weekend, high pressure builds quite widely, and that means Saturday looks like a fine day for most. Plenty of warm sunshine. Temperatures are rising as well. However, on Saturday night and into Sunday, that could cause some storms.
Hello, I'm Michelle Jubilee, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Jubilee, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
9:22 morning. Let's have a good dose of showbiz for you. Ellie Phillips is here. Morning, morning, morning.
Morning.
We've got to talk court cases.
We have to. Of course, the Wagatha Christie trial continues. Yesterday, Rebecca Vardy took the stand again to continue her defence of what's been going on, and she was cross-examined by Colleen Rooney's lawyers. It came out yesterday that actually she's discussed a lot with her former agent, Caroline Watt, ideas of leaking stories. She claims it was all jokes, but the stories that came out were one about Riyad Mahrez, who is one of her husband's teammates on Leicester City, that she did this whole thing that, you know, the teammates were angry at him because he protested going to training. She tried to leak that, allegedly. Danny Drinkwater, which we know he was arrested for drink driving, she tried to leak that. Danielle Lloyd's miscarriage. There was a discussion between her agent about this story, trying to get that into the press, and unnamed footballers and celebrity affairs. She says all these discussions with her agent were just joking around. They weren't serious about it, even though she says in some of them, oh, you know, I want paying for this one. And she also admitted that it looks like in some of the exchanges that she did direct her agent to go and look at Colleen Rooney's private Instagram to get stories.
Right, so this is a trial when she's trying to clear her name.
Exactly.
It's about reputation, and she sat there for 5 hours, and it's just come out there looking worse than before.
This has not gone well for her at all. This is just a picture of someone who has this very close relationship with the press, that she does think about leaking stories. Maybe she said she didn't action them, but, you know, it was on the cards and they're discussing it. Something else that came out as well is that she denied deliberately sitting behind Colleen Rooney in the 2016 Euro clash, which is this famous picture where, you know, they were both in the audience together and she's cheering. But it does look as though it is this campaign of publicity for her and to keep the press sweet and on her side by giving these stories. That's how it's coming out. It doesn't look good. There were a lot of tears on the stands yesterday. She's going to be back on the stand again today, and later on today we're expecting to see Colleen Rooney take the stand as well.
Oh, tell you what.
It's going to go on for another how many days?
They say it's 6 in total, so today's day 3 of the trial, so we've got a few more to go.
It has been quite entertaining. Anyway, let's
Can we talk nappies? Which is not something I'd ever say.
Go on then.
Yes, OK, so this is Gwyneth Paltrow. She's got her Goop brand, which we all know about, the lifestyle brand. She has launched some nappies. She's called them diapers with an apostrophe on the E to make them very posh and very French.
Right.
They are $120 for a pack of 12. They are lined with virgin alpaca wool. They are tied together with a gemstone, an amber gemstone, and they're infused with jasmine and bergamot. This is all set because, you know, these are luxury items in America. In 33 states across America, diapers are classed as a luxury item and therefore taxed as such. So a few days ago, she said that she was launching these nappies, and today she's realised that they're actually a satire to protest diaper tax. So I think you can buy them. You might be able to buy them. They are technically fictional. She's saying they're fictional, but I think some people would want to buy them just for the status of it. But basically, she said that the reason they're $120 is because in America, that's the average amount of tax parents pay over the course of a year on diapers. So it's actually quite a clever thing to do. It's quite a clever twist there.
It is quite a twist. But I was hoping she was coming out with reusable nappies, but a glamorous version to try and tackle the landfill caused by them.
And they're not. They're definitely not reusable. They are throwaway nappies.
Why would you want reusable nappies?
That's the thing.
Because of the landfill problem.
Oh, well, did you ever use them?
Yes, I did a whole thing for the television. Did 2 weeks of plastic-free in my house. Yeah, then I was a convert. No, I was a convert, and I used them the rest of the time with my little boy. Didn't have my little girl.
you.
Good luck to you. Did you use them with your other one?
No.
Oh, so you weren't converted that much?
No.
So sod the landfill.
Well, there's a long story which we haven't got time to go into about why I didn't the second time round. But anyway.
Ellie, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Well, love shines a light on what you've been getting up to. Let me tell you that. That is it for this morning. I'm going to be back from 6 o'clock tomorrow with Anne. You're off.
I'm off tomorrow, but Tom Harwood is up next with The Briefing. See you next week.
Hello, good morning. I'm Aidan McGivern. A fine start for many of us. Plenty of sunshine around first thing, but there will be further showers in the north, especially northern and western Scotland, where these showers or longer spells of rain will continue during the next couple of days. Low pressure close to Iceland will send a few weather fronts into the north of Scotland, but the front that caused yesterday's wet weather for England and Wales, well, that's well out of the way, and as a result, a fine day to come. Plenty of sunshine during the morning and early afternoon across England and Wales. Bright as well further north, but for Northern Ireland, for northern and western Scotland, there'll be further showers, or even for western Scotland, some more prolonged wet weather at times. A keen breeze here, making it feel cool, but temperatures still mostly around or a touch above average. We're looking at 17 to 20 in the south, 13 to 15 further north. A few showers into Wales and the southwest to end the afternoon and go into the evening, but clear spells for the southern half of the UK. I think Manchester northwards will see thicker cloud through the night and showers or longer spells of rain. That only lasts a few hours, and then by the early hours of Friday, mostly the wet weather